Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here, as always, is the grumpy old man. They say there is no shame in his game because
Stop. If you're going to fuck up my intro, I'm just going to do it myself.
do your intro, Grumpy.
Here, this is your NHL analyst and expert, the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame in my game because I'm always the same. The goof to my left is TJ, and down in the bottom is special guest star Andy Francess, who was on with us, I believe, September 1st. And when we preached what was going to happen at the beginning of the season, TJ, now I will let you take over after you have once again somehow bungled my intro that we've been doing for 5 years. Thank you.
Hey, Grumpy, I got to keep it interesting somehow. But yes, Andy Francess, friend and guest of the show here in the past, is with us today. We talked a little bit in the offseason about what we had saw last year and what we had maybe seen coming on the horizon. Some of you may have seen this posted earlier, but for those of you who have not, we do want to be able to go ahead and share a little bit of a recap because I assure you we're going to be talking about some of these issues and items of past. I hate to feel like we might be validated a bit here, but we might. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the stream, guys. I want you to listen here and to the first 5 or 6 minutes here. We're going to listen to a little bit what we had covered in the offseason. Schedule change. We're not going to be playing, the Devils and the Buffalo Sabres, 8+ games a year like we did last year. That's something that hasn't been talked about too much. We've talked about, hey, we've got a condensed schedule. We've got the Olympics thrown in there. We're going to have the long road streak to start the season. I think it's interesting also you bring up, no longer are we going to be playing some of the cellar dwellers, the worst teams in the NHL for a time period of almost 16 games and a shortened season. We're not going to have that advantage this next year. I think that's a very interesting point. You brought up, hey, how Varlamov set the Islanders franchise record for most shutouts and how we might be singing a different tune.
When we played in the first round, we wound up playing the empty net, which was Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, we were outplayed.
Absolutely,
we were absolutely outplayed. We were outplayed in the first 4 games of the Boston series. When Carlo got injured, it started to switch, and then the Islanders gained this weird sort of confidence because I was like, "There's not a chance in hell this team can go the distance." But after that Game 6 against Boston, there was this weird switch in gameplay. Like they all of a sudden they at least had stretches where they were dominating because I had zero faith. And I'm just going to take it to the comparing last year's playoffs, this year's playoffs. Anybody who defends any sort of point that last year, by the way, here comes my grump. Anybody who defends last year, because usually when I bring up Toews, people say, well, what do you mean? Nothing was lost. We were the top defense and we made it 1 game further. All you need to do is go look at the games from when we played in that playoff bubble to this year. Other teams could get nothing going. You talk about Florida, every single game, under 30 shots. In the deciding Game 7 against Philadelphia, under 20 shots, was it? We were shutting teams down. This year, they're conceding 50 shots, 45 shots, 50 shots, and there's chances left and right. Game 5 against Pittsburgh, rewatch it. Game 5 against Boston, literally hanging on for dear life, and that was not the case. And then also trying to claim that we were the top defense in a shortened season when we're just raking up shutouts against the Devils. You saw what happened when they had to play increased competition. The defense as a whole was considerably worse this year. Your eyes will not lie to you. Any playoff game, teams had no trouble getting chances versus the Islanders from the first game all the way to the last game. And it was like the fact that people can't see that is bewildering to me.
Well, it's because they have vision problems, and the only thing that corrects them is to wear your orange and blue glasses where everything is perfect in the world.
Second line defensively did not foot the bill.
And there is a key cog on that second line that look, we'll do this I'm operating as like a guy who took his glasses off and I just see Islanders players blur. I have no, like the reason I yell about Toews, I don't like how he raised his kids. I don't care about, I'm talking about what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes as somebody who played, watched for generations. Like Josh Bailey is a 100% liability. And all he offers, what he offers now, because I don't do that whole, but the leadership thing. And just like that worked for the Rangers and Callahan. And when they just chucked him, they finally made it to the Cup. And then they brought in Drury and had to buy him out. So take that aside. All he can do is make good passes when given time. He's not strong on the puck. He's not strong on the boards. And the area he murders us the most. And I swear to you, go to my Twitter once every month. He'll just say, yep, ruin that one, is as the lefty quarterback on the power play. He doesn't have the finesse he forces pass after pass after pass, and he can't one time, which means, you ever wonder how Ryan Pulock is not just ripping in missiles like Ovechkin or Stamkos? It's because they know there's not the threat of a lefty one-timer like Kucherov, or like how they set up Carlson. You need somebody on the other side. And when they know Bailey cannot one-time it, and he has no shot, and he forces passes through, he is a power play 2 ruiner. It is. And maybe this year you'll watch a little closely. I'll just text you every time. Did you see that one? Did you see that one? I could even show you in the playoffs. Even when he got lucky, just throws it off his skate and it goes in. I don't care that it goes in. That's not a repeatable play. It's not. I understand. He's been here a long time. He goes to my friend's restaurant. It has nothing to do with that. I'm talking about the player that I see out there. And someone's like, did you see those points in the playoffs? Yes, the line played great, and secondary assists I can get if I win a face-off. You know.
You agree completely. You agree completely with us on that one. I know maybe you might be even a little bit more negative towards Josh Bailey than Grumpy is.
He's my secret hope that the Islanders are getting a true scoring winger. Is that if they somehow can convince some of the idiots who think he's like a godsend, maybe all those idiots on Twitter's purpose was served because one of these GMs goes to Twitter and goes, you know what? This guy might be pretty damn good, and then trade for him. Maybe that will be the beautiful, karmic nature of all this, and I can finally sleep a sigh of relief.
No, it won't happen.
And I just don't want this team in this situation to be something we look back on 5, 6, 10 years down the road when we're going to hit the dark and rough times. And boy, oh boy, will they be dark and rough. But we all understand it now. I don't want us to sit back and think, damn, maybe if we just would have made that one move, maybe if we would have gone a little bit outside the box, maybe if we said, Josh Bailey, Kyle Palmieri, we need to go ahead and make a drastic move. We need a guy who can go ahead and really pick corners extremely well because Matt Barzal is going to open up spaces. He's got the speed, and we've got Anders Lee to park his body in front of the net. We need a guy who can pick corners. We need a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko. If that was us not including Kyle Palmieri, I wanted us to make that move. I think we needed to make a big move.
So I will tell you right now, I think you will believe that's going to be a lot less of the case if our current stable of 6 defensemen is our starting 6 defensemen, because there are no 9 games against Buffalo and Devils to save us this year. The Islanders' defense was considerably worse. Go ahead, guy at home. Circle the number on your screen in the shortened fake season where you play the Devils 8 games in a row. Watch them against any playoff team. Chances were a flying. Okay, and now you're removing. Now look, Leddy. I thought Leddy was perfect as a third pairing defenseman. You have no pressure on you. Him and Boychuk or him and Green. I loved every minute. Everything was so perfect. And that's why every team was shut under 30 shots. Go look at those playoffs, man. Until they played Tampa, who was a juggernaut. Every game under 30 shots. It's because we had 2 shutdown pairings, and our third pairing used to be our first pairing. Like that's where we were at. And now we're looking at half of that chopped off. God forbid one of the top 2 loses their time. Then what? You throw Mayfield. Who are we rolling out there as our bottom 2 pairs?
I mean, think about it, right? Last year, Mayfield and Leddy were not good together.
Yeah. And by the way, that was my that was my last seed of proof about Toews, because Toews made it easy to work with. He was so smooth. And then everyone goes, what's wrong with Scott Mayfield? And I'm right back there, just pulling my hair out right from the roots.
Yes, I've said that to people. They tell me I'm crazy, but it's true. He made Scott Mayfield a better defenseman. And it'll be interesting now, though, right? You're looking at Dobson playing on your second pairing with who?
I got
Andy
a weird
Green?
sniff. I got a weird feeling that it's
Don't
either
say
going
it.
to be
Don't
either
say
going to
it.
be Sammy Vatanen
Ah, he said it.
or no. But my sniff is that freaking Chara's going to want to do a 1-year deal. And when you talk about Mayfield, and dude, this isn't some fan in me talk. I don't care. I'm just saying if he wants to play one more year in the Northeast for a contender, because it's something with his family, said it has to be in the Northeast. So he's not going back to Boston. He's not going back to Washington. What other team is close from there?
Yeah, you're talking maybe any of the New York teams there, the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. But yeah, he's finished.
Can't play anymore. Can't play anymore.
If you were to play him on a you come off the bench,
didn't he play every game last year?
He did. Oh,
He was
when we
terrible.
can't play, man, oh man, how many times do you watch the games too? Matt Barzal made him look foolish a few times when we were playing the Capitals. I was like, holy obviously I was like, man, oh man, Barzal's taking a huge step. Maybe I was just like, maybe I was overplaying, the level that Chara still skates at.
He can't skate anymore. He just can't skate anymore. He's 43 years old. I mean, he just can't skate anymore. The fact is, where everyone's going to play on every single line. There is no competition for open spots.
That is one conceptual item that I've always had an issue with. And again, if you were looking at the lineup day one, if you're a younger player, and again, albeit there aren't many that I think could fight or vie for a spot, I'm a unequivocal honk. But if you're a younger player in Bridgeport and you look at the lineup the way it's currently constituted, you think to yourself, it doesn't matter what I do in camp, I could throw up 50 goals and 50 assists in a matter of 10 games in preseason. Doesn't matter what happens, the lineup's already cemented in. I've never been a big fan of that. We wanted to go ahead and play that portion because I think it was important. It provides a little context. We were talking, all three of us on this podcast in the offseason, about issues where they lied and what needed to be addressed in the offseason and what we kind of predicted going into this year. People would call us crazy. And again, I was in the camp of there was no way we were not a playoff contender and not a Stanley Cup contender after making it to the Eastern Conference Finals in back-to-back seasons. But you look at some of those takes and you say, oh yeah, some of them were spot on. Some of mine, not so much. But I wanted to provide context for today's conversation so we could follow up. So the first 10 minutes of the show, we wanted to have a little bit of a callback. And yes, we do have Andy Francess here on the show again. Antsy, yeah.
Antsy. We took him off his Thorazine drip since the last podcast, so he's a loose cannon today.
I kept thinking as I was watching that was, at some point in the last few months, I definitely was trying to talk to some girl. I can be charming at times, and she probably was like, oh, I met this guy. And then she goes online and sees that. It's over. It's over. It's over. There is no hangout after that. I'm going nuts about shots on goal between playoffs years. It's over. That's all I could think as I was seeing that. That's all I kept thinking is me yelling at this screen. I didn't even know you guys at the time. I'm out of my mind. I'm out of my mind. But anyway,
I'm going to disagree with
now
you
we
there.
could get onto the. Well, Grumpy, how about you relax? I know you wanted Bruce Buffer doing your intro or something like that. You have immediate complaints. We'll see if we can get him. I heard that he's on whatever that shout out thing is called.
Cameo.
Yeah.
Believe me, you being on this show you're like a chick magnet now because we attract a lot of women to the show. I don't know if you realize that or not. So you have a great chance of picking up some unsuspecting lady.
No, it's not about that. It's just like there are a certain contingent of people who say, "Oh, I hate to hear myself. I hate to hear my voice played back." No, I hate to watch myself going wild when it wasn't even provoked. It's not like you guys were trying to rile me up. I was getting myself riled up for no reason. There was like a theoretical person arguing with me who wasn't even there. I guess that's how schizophrenia starts.
Yes. I love the vigor behind it. I tell you, and the reason I wanted to pull that up is because
I love the vigor behind it. I love the vigor behind it.
What, Grumpy? I'm being serious. I did.
I still want to know how you are incapable of getting my intro right. I'm baffled by that.
Well, honestly. Go get Bruce Buffer then. What is this? This guy's not an intro specialist. He didn't grow up doing intros. He's not the host of The Price is Right. Like, give the guy a break.
No. Here's the thing. He's been doing it for 5 years. You don't realize what a dictator this guy is. And you have no idea.
We
He's
have
a freaking dictator.
In Grump's defense, we have done that podcast intro for, I don't know, like at least twice a week for the last
5 years.
Yeah, it's been at least like 200 or 300 times. So
what? You're on a tough stretch of intros right now.
I'm on a tough stretch of intros, kind of like the Islanders.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, perfect segue.
Before we get too far, Andy, you want to push some of your stuff before we get too far?
Yeah. So basically, in this little studio that you see right here, I do a weekly podcast. It's a comedy podcast called "You're Still Here." And I film it here. Part of the reason you see me get riled up is because it's a solo podcast. So, I kind of have to provide all the energy myself. You can find it on any of my social media. You can go to my Instagram, on Twitter, YouTube. There's links to all of them. I stream it live every week. I try to do it on Tuesday or Wednesday, but I always give heads up ahead of time so people know when it is. I'm going to get back into doing stand-up soon. I've done some stand-up comedy. You can see some of my old clips on my profile. But, yeah, I'm your, 2022 comedian / content creator / podcast guy, as you tend to see nowadays.
There it is.
So thank you for allowing me that opportunity there, Grump.
And
I wanted to make sure that I gave you that opportunity because TJ would have forgotten.
Totally. All of Andy's information is in a link in the description below. It's the same place, Grumpy, where we keep the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man podcast in the merch store. The item you can't find where you hit expand, that's where you'll be able to find every single piece of information on Andy. You can find the Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah.
You can find
and
YouTube.
The good news is I have the domain name for all of them. So the little name that you see hovering right now, if you go to Instagram.com, but / that, same thing for TikTok, YouTube, you name it. I got all the domain names until they, take me down on all of them, which is probably going to happen eventually at this rate.
Very soon.
Now, let me ask you this, guys. We start back up play and action for Islanders tomorrow evening. Thank goodness, even though we were, on a poor stretch, I'll tell you, it's been tough not to have any Islander games to watch over, 12 game stretch and a 5 or 7 game stretch before that. I want to ask you before we get started back up here again with games, what has been the biggest surprise for each of you this season? I don't think I've ever asked Grumpy this question. I know I haven't asked Andy this question. I do want to know before we get started back into action, what has been the biggest surprise for you so far regarding the Islanders this year?
Go ahead, Andy. I'll let you tackle that first.
I guess the chalk answer would be like, well, the amount they struggled going off to back Eastern Conference. No, but the secondary scoring, I guess you could say, is the biggest surprise to me, even if you factor in struggling Eastern Conference final hangover, the level at which they've struggled. I got it. Naturally. Beauvillier. I did not see struggles in the way the struggles come in the immense fashion that they have for him. He's somebody who should be entering, approaching true prime years. Usually you don't see this. It just makes no sense for somebody on the ascent to hit such a patch like this in their career. It's so weird.
And for me, I'm going to say I didn't expect the rapid descent into mediocrity of everyone over 30, because it seems like the whole veteran group has just totally tailed off this year. That's my big. I expected us to tail off, but not to this extent and this quick.
I think certain players did, and we had talked about it. And the reason, again, we showed that earlier clip. We had talked about how much of a hole, and Nick Leddy was not a guy that you would say, yes, I'd love to have Nick Leddy in a top 4 position. He's a guy who is a very, very solid, top 6 defenseman who can occasionally slide in there, good at head manning the puck. He's good with vision there, and he's got offensive acumen. He's a, swift skater, a little lazy at times, but we had talked about somebody that we were going to miss desperately come this season. And, we replace him with Zdeno Chara. And albeit Chara's played better over the last 2 games, he is not a replacement for Nick Leddy. And the defensive drop-off we've had, even off of last season where we played a bloated schedule, as you had mentioned, against the Devils, 8 times, against the Sabres 8 times, it's just exacerbated the issue.
Yeah, it's the one thing you saw coming all of last year. During the season and during the playoffs, I hate to sound like an absolute broken record, but if you just simply go watch those games, the ease at which scoring chances came and were conceded against the Islanders, they were, I mean, like, you're talking about an absurd amount of shots given up by this defensive team. When people were defending that they were the same exact team, they would always say, well, kind of same ranking defensively. So why are they conceding 50 shots per game, no matter who they were playing in the playoffs? I know not every case was 50 shots, but you're talking about over 30 every single game. How could that be the case if they were the same defensively? All we're seeing is a progression of what we saw last year. It makes sense. We lose a top 4 defenseman. Previous offseason, we struggle a little more. Then we lose another one. I mean, it's really not, it doesn't take rocket science here to figure out that you remove those pieces. It's not easy to replace defensive pieces. That's why I always said, people stop focusing on Tarasenko, stop focusing on this, stop focusing on that. If you have a core of 3 lines of defensemen that you can roll out there and feel confident in, you'll always be in the game. And we've lost half that, and we're at 3. So you see the results.
Absolutely.
One thing I'm pleased about.
And by the way, I just want to let you know, I'm going to go nuts at some point, but I'm so embarrassed at that first 10 minutes that I'm just kind of trying to be like some, eloquent man at a cafe right now. But
you don't need to play the knee roll. You don't have to play the, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. No, you
don't.
No,
nobody's telling me. I'm just actually embarrassed at watching myself.
TJ, I'd like to say one thing I'm really been pleased about recently is how we're shooting the puck more on the power play. I think, I think everyone needs to know that we need to shoot the puck more on the power play. Don't you, Andy?
So is that what we're going to, what do you want to start with the power play?
Yeah, let's start with the power play. We got the new guys, and they seem to be shooting the puck more.
Well, and no Bailey too, right? Just like, and again, it coincides.
No Nick Leddy, no Josh Bailey.
Okay.
Well, seems like we put a lot more pucks on net.
Well, as I had mentioned in that clip, although in a little more of an aggressive fashion, as I would have hoped, but Josh Bailey, it was so easy to see for years. Same thing, get to that spot on the circle and just stay flat, stationary, force a pass out of the zone. It's so crazy that in that clip, I said, just wait till this year. I'm going to put it up. I put up so many that I just said, you know what? I think this point has been drilled home enough. Like, that's it. Even on Twitter, it's just a congregation of gargoyles. It's the worst people on earth. I said Twitter is misery's expansion draft. Take the most miserable person from every town, plop them in one place. That's what Twitter is. Nobody will ever say they made a mistake. Nobody will ever say they're wrong. But I'm wrong on Twitter is just silence. That's what I'm wrong is. And that's what we've heard from the Josh Bailey crowd. The silence that always should have been there, even after your cool playoff assists. And now it's truly come to fruition. And I'm not even going to try to say we were right. It's been like this for years. But it's just crazy that it took. I think that's the crazy. People really need to see such drastic versions of things. All these people. Oh, here we go. I'm ramping up. Here we go. But all these people, they want to take like Rogaine when they're fully bald. No. You got to see the hair loss coming. And I saw that Josh Bailey hair loss literally and figuratively.
Hey, if Rogan ever wants to pick us up and sponsor our podcast, I'd more than happily use their product.
I didn't want to hit on that.
It's nice shot at TJ, Andy. I appreciate it.
It's low hanging.
It was not. It was all I could think of.
One thing that I'm surprised you didn't say anything about, when you were talking about the positives, about Josh Bailey, is his intelligence level.
Oh, wait a minute. I went on an insult, but we were supposed to be talking about the power play. But the fact that he was sidelined, it forced the hand. And TJ, you brought this up last time. It's one of your biggest frustrations, and it's slowly becoming one of mine, is how you had said that it was the Hickey injury that forced Toews into the lineup. Trotz's inability to give younger guys a chance and a sustained chance. Well, it was the whether it was COVID and injury taking Bailey out for a prolonged period and forcing power play alterations. And what you're seeing is a player who also has the threat of a shot and a pass, so that he'll pull the defenders to him, create more lanes, which allows the shots to make Grumpy happy. But if Bailey's over there, guess who's not going over there? Me defending, because I know he's never shooting. And that's where the majority of this issues stemmed from. And him being out of it has allowed these shots that Grumpy has been so excited
Shoot
about.
the
Yeah,
puck.
you're the guy. You're the guy. You're the guy.
Grumpy is he embodies that guy. There's no doubt about it. And I know
I gotta say, it frustrates me no end when you just see them masturbating with one another on the side of the board, watching him and Letty just pleasure themselves passing the puck back and forth.
Yeah.
It was incredibly frustrating.
Well,
Yep.
we don't have to worry about that anymore, thank goodness. And
What do you mean?
I'm going to segue, Grump. At least from what we've been told, we have seen younger players start to step it up. We've seen guys who look hungry, guys a little bit more competition, and we've seen Noah Dobson step up his game where he said, I've got a chance to take top 4 minutes. What am I going to do? I think he's really stepped up his game. Kiefer Bellows is a guy that a lot of people had deemed, hey, dead. His career is over. One poor game at the beginning of the season. We said, let's pump the brakes a bit. But hey, he was a time of death. People were announcing it there on social media, and he's played a little bit better. Now, Grumpy and I have kind of opined on this and talked about it. Now, I see the lineups. Kyle Palmieri technically was not in the starting lineup here today. He was skating there as an extra in practice on the lines. But do you think we will see Barry Trotz when he returns back from COVID protocol? Do you think we're going to see him return back to the same old tried and true lines that he rolled out at the beginning of the season, or does he ride the hot hand?
Well, if it's working and it's getting results, the sheer lack of results toward the beginning of the year, there would have to be some semblance of winning there has to be a reason you'd be going back to that. But when you're struggling for points and you're struggling for wins, you really don't want to tinker with that, which, unfortunately, during the playoffs, they kept Zajac in there once Wahlstrom gets injured because it was like, all right, well, we've won a couple games. Let's not mess with chemistry. Now let's see if it works on the other side where a couple young players step up and they're amassing points in a few games, and let's see if he can stick with that lineup. I know many of the fans want this in favor of some of those veterans who are sidelined.
Yeah, for me, I think you might see him start with the younger guys, but if they have one game where they don't produce, then I think you'll see him go back to
the quick pulls.
Yeah,
what I'm very surprised about with those situations, I can't believe that more players, especially when you see now in these Trotz must be the coolest guy. And I'm talking about, there's some people that are so cool, you're almost okay with them screwing you. There must be this case. I mean, Ho-Sang never spoke one bad word of him. Wahlstrom could be saying easily, I'm popping in goals at a pretty nice rate, and this guy's giving me no ice time. No complaints. You hear nothing but happiness. I need some of this. I need whatever he's got. I need some of that.
I've got a question. Is that a lie? Because we've spoken about that before. We talked about Andrew Ladd's comments after he left. And again, they do a nice job of flowering it up and making it sound all nice. They say, sometimes when I was down there in the A, I just felt like there was no chance for me to go ahead and get a chance in the NHL. Ho-Sang said something similar. And I just wonder if other players feel that way, but they're smart enough knowing not to say something like that because Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz will banish you.
That's interesting. So you're going with the Belichick approach where you dare not speak of,
I guess
that's speaking quite highly of the Islanders infrastructure that you dare not speak of it. I mean, how the times have changed.
I'm not saying it's the Islanders. I think it's the code of silence because of Lou Merta, is what we call it, instead of Omerta, which was the old mafia term. Lou Merta, because of Lou Lamoriello, you don't want to cross him.
I do wonder, and because you're right, they always seem so nice. Oh, we're just over here, we're working towards a common goal. They say the things you're supposed to say in these meetings, interviews, and it's really easy as a player to feel frustrated. I'll be honest, if I was in their shoes, I probably would let something slide a little bit, not purposely, but it's just who I was as a person. I always have been. But I always wonder if they conceal a little bit of that because they say, I know I'll have absolutely no shot in hell if I say anything against the grain.
Well, see, the one good thing is, where you think you would lose your composure, I think Andy and myself would be able to maintain composure even when things are going really poorly.
It's a weird thing about me. If the house started burning down, I actually keep my cool. It's trivial matters that drive me insane. I don't know what kind of complex that is, but no doctor here. That's what I got.
I have it too. Little things send me over the edge, but big picture, I'm very, very calm.
It's interesting.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, have there been any big positives that you've seen this year, Andy? And again, we've kind of talked about some of the youth, again, looking like they're showing signs of life, which we didn't necessarily think
Yeah.
they would.
Here's something you'll never hear on social media. I was incorrect about one assessment. I believe that typically you can see some juice in players, even if they don't kind of have it together. And when I watched Bellows play last year, I remember I called him a generic creative player, one that you never really stacked up any attributes on. And it is nice to see, maybe that was just in hockey. You do get that sometimes. You get one of the slow burners, like just, for example, is Nico Hischier ever going to be good? Is he ever going to be good? Well, when does the magic jump happen? When does Capo Caco look like a second overall pick? Because you start getting to 3 years, 4 years, you'd say, the guy never turned my head once. And now I'm supposed to believe, he's going back to Finland and, getting on some regimen and he's coming back, taking over the league. How many times does that truly happen? You can kind of see it. And I'm happy to see that there some little bit of that with Bellows. That's something I would say would be, I guess, a pleasant surprise. I guess Sorokin taking the next step. I would say one thing that always bothered me about him is he looks small in there. It looks like you can pick corners on him. I know he's unbelievable side to side, like next level unbelievable. You can't deke him, but it still looks like you can kind of pick a corner on him. But he has made the next jump in that progression too, where he is able to stop more shooters than he was last year. So I guess those are two nice surprises. I still thought it would be more of a Varlamov Sorokin split right down the middle, but it was nice to see him take that next step.
And I'll tell you my positives because there are a couple. I just want to touch on, you mentioned Hischier and Kako. The one difference between them and Bellows is the fact that
I'm not comparing though. Those you're talking about top 2 picks in the draft.
No, I'm just saying in their development is they've been given legitimate chances for a long time, gotten big minutes, don't have to worry about getting benched. That's not been the case with Bellows. And so for me, my positive is COVID. I think it's the best thing that's happened to the Islanders in a long time. Why do I say those things, right? People say the grumpy old man. Who finds a positive with COVID? Well, I can because
that's just a great line, man. That is just a great line.
I'm absolutely Mr. Positive. Glass is always half full with me. Everyone knows that. So what has COVID done for us? And what have injuries done for us? It's enabled young players like Noah Dobson and Kiefer Bellows and Sebastian Aho and Robin Salo. It's given them an opportunity to play regular shifts without having to be on that super short Barry leash that the young players are always on because they had no one else to put in for them. And so what have you seen? When they get a regular shift over 10, 15 games, you're seeing them produce and improve. And isn't that what you want from your younger players? So that's my positive.
I guess go ahead, TJ.
I was about to say, I love that you found some sort of positive in this COVID light, Grumpy.
Yes.
There are others that are in a similar funny vein, but I will not be saying that here on this podcast. However, when it comes to those players, I think it's a natural point to maybe go into that a little bit. I understand there's a lot of excitement when it comes to Noah Dobson, obviously producing offensively. And yeah, he's filling in that offensive void that Nick Leddy left. But man, is this guy Chris Campoli on defense. Yep, that's right. Chris Campoli. Like the amount of mistakes and like I just gave him credit. He's doing what you're hoping and he's making those necessary strides offensively. But man, does this guy got a long way to go defensively. And the only reason I bring it up is because remember, we're still a defense-first team. If we're ever going to make runs, we're going to have a lot of games in succession that are 2 goals against, 2 goals against, 1 goal against, 2 goals against. You cannot be having games like the one we saw against Nashville. And I'm not even talking about the last goal. I'm talking about all 4 goals were both on Aho and Dobson. All 4 of them on blatant errors. And I am a Barry guy on that front. Like I defended benching Dobson in the last 10 minutes against a team like Boston, where the margin of error is razor thin. You cannot be committing these
these turnovers. And yes, there is that delicate balance. And now, since the Isles have, dropped themselves into hell in the standings, go ahead, play them. But, just because you're seeing some progression on one side doesn't mean you can just fully neglect the other side when the other side is more contingent to the Islanders' success.
Yeah, see, I think that he's improved vastly defensively. And any struggles that he's had this year are the direct result of him playing with Zdeno Chara. It's tough when you have to play both defense spots at the same time. You got Chara. He's got, they have like that little stick that they have in the center of the ice. They just put him in there, and he just goes around in circles with his stick trying to knock the puck off. And
talking about like air hockey, they call
like,
that.
Yeah, kind of like an air hockey thing, but it's not like one of the up and down ones that you're able to slide them back and forth. It's just like they're stationary, and he just pivots around in a circle. And I think, like I said, I've been pleasantly surprised with his defensive improvement this year. I really have.
If you're gonna be able to offer me something on offense, like, it's all a risk reward. Like Dobson previously was, we're not getting any of the offensive reward, and this guy's, he's a liability on defense. Now, in my opinion, I don't think he's made these strides defensively like you do, but it's fine, to each his own. But at least I can say, you know what? The trade-off is we're getting some of these power play points, and we're getting him joining the rush, and we're getting some offensive production in lieu of the lack of defensive production, in my opinion.
I do think he's better. I obviously think he's better defensively than you do, which is fine. But like I said, and I feel the only reason that he's being more offensive is because Barry's had no other option but to play him. And maybe he just said, you know what? Screw it, Barry. You can't bench me or limit me to 5 minutes a game. So I'm just going to go out there and play my game. And that's what he should do.
I think the pairing has a lot to do with it. I'm going to talk about that. And I also think the mistakes Dobson makes are coachable mistakes. When I see mistakes from mostly Chara, sometimes with Green, they're no longer coachable mistakes. Those are just their inability to actually execute their technique at a high enough level, whether it's, hey, I can't go ahead and cover a guy. I've got to open my hips too early, and it leads to an inside lane for a shot. Those are things you
like a cornerback who has to get moved to safety or something, like, because he doesn't have the quick twitch muscles.
That's right.
Yeah.
Andy,
I think real quick, I want to talk on this. You looked at how much the first pair struggled, Pelech and Pulock, when they were split up earlier on this season. And again, you could say, hey, it had to do with the fact that they were on a 13-game road trip, and you can give a litany of excuses. But that first defensive pairing, Pulock and Pelech, really struggled when they were split up. And maybe it was because one was paired up with Chara, maybe not. I'm not sure, but I think it's something that we're going to keep an eye on as the season continues.
I just want to say, TJ, you are so rational and calm in that host chair over there. I mean, it's almost like you're like human no-dos over there. Just okay, stop nodding.
Well,
but to your point, when they put Pulock with Chara, his play fell off the planet too. What's the common denominator?
Maybe Pulock and Pelech just work really well together. It's
or maybe Chara's just cashed.
It might have a little bit to do with both. Both can be true,
Well, is this the time? I wanted to do it, maybe a little further down the road, but there's going to be a blow up because we have to finally put the last nail in the coffin. And you know what this is going to be. If you're a person who's joined in and then you're like, who is this guy? And you clicked on my profile. Once a week, I will give the Islander Nation a once a week update on the probably biggest mistake since, trading for Alexei Yashin. And that would be getting rid of Devon Toews. So you let me know if we're going to do that now, or you want me to just kind of store that in the gut and let it fly later.
Do it. We do a little bit every once in a while. We talk about that. It's like a little running bit, like, hey, he's only averaging over a point a game here. I know he wouldn't do that with the Islanders, but you talk about a premier talent like that. 2 second-round picks.
Well, I just thought we were also going to talk about maybe the fact, you said the worst mistake since Yashin. I mean, I think picking up Oleg Kvasha was even worse. That's right. I'm cheap popping on your jersey over there.
No. Exactly, but do you see what that jersey says on the back? It says Oleg. Yes, obviously, I didn't purchase it because I was the biggest Oleg Kvasha supporter. So my older brother and me, our policy with the Islanders, especially when there was no winning, it was we either wanted to see somebody who was good,
or we wanted to see somebody who was entertaining, like somebody actually just like entertaining us. Oleg Kvasha was the funniest guy you've ever seen in your life. His helmet flew off every single shift. He had the most stoic Russian face you've ever seen. He looked like the Penguin from Batman Returns, and he gave the funniest post-game interviews ever. He once beat Boston because he'd come out with the craziest play every once in a while, 1-on-2 in Boston in overtime, scores a game winner. They interview him after the game, and he just says, life is good when you play normal hockey. Today we played normal hockey. That it just doesn't get better than that. So he was like not a legend, but he was just so funny in our house that we got a jersey and put Oleg on the back. That's what it was.
Now, before I know I interrupted you, I want you to delve into what you were going to delve into. Oh, there you go.
There he is.
Yeah.
Oswald Cobblepot.
Now, do you have Oleg? Can you show these people who Oleg are? Oleg is because
I'll get that pulled up. I'll try to do a side by side.
Because Oleg, I mean, he was the Penguin. I'll be shocked if you can find a picture of Oleg Kvasha smiling. There's no way it exists. There's no way it exists.
You can always paint one of the smiles on.
No, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. So, we could come back to that. So, do you want me to go off, Grumpy?
Please do. You've had enough time to calm yourself down.
Right. So we're gonna put two things to rest. Number one, over the summer, that guy you've had on, his name's Phil's Facts, but I previously referred to him as Phil's Fiction. I've previously rendered him. He was on a big probation. I'm not somebody who thinks people should be deplatformed, but he was on a permanent probation. I banned him from relevancy in terms of me, which really means nothing, because at the time he was justifying, like most of the cave dwellers on Twitter, that Devon Toews was worth letting go. A simple cap casualty. That's it. My other friend, he points to some article where Lamoriello said, we'd like to keep him, but cap casualty. Well, then why wasn't Barzal, another restricted free agent, just a cap casualty? Because, oh yes, that's right, because he is an unbelievable player, which is what you keep. You keep your unbelievable players.
Particularly when they're younger.
Exactly. He had to re-sign Pulak. Okay? So I'm going to tell you something that guy said, Phil's Fiction at the time. Phil, if you're watching, this has a happy ending. I wouldn't just bash you and leave it at that.
He's going to get
a
a
scummy
happy
thing
ending?
to do.
Is that like
I am, because the guy, he atoned for himself, and that's all you can ever ask for. The same way that hopefully I did with TJ when it comes to Bellows, because I said that last time. TJ was upset, but he's a nice guy, and nice people just go like, oh, okay. But I know he was pissed off on the inside. But quote, he said, Devon Toews is a bottom pairing defenseman. Change my mind. He just threw that out there. First of all, clickbait, I hate stuff like that. But how about this, Philip? Let's change your mind, shall we? Well, he's the owner of one of the most absurd stats you'll ever see in your life, and that is we are in January, and he still hasn't registered a single minus in any game this season. Somebody who, I don't know, Islander fans delusionally believed was some sort of defensive liability has not registered a minus in a single game this season. Do you know what that means? That means every single game he's been on the ice for more goals or even. That's preposterous. It's preposterous this far into the season. It's crazy. You can go right now. There's some person who's pissed off, doesn't believe me. He's pulling up the stats, and then he's going to close it out. Like, those people who silent Google, they're silent Googlers when you say a point in a room.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Andy.
And then they pull out their phone. No. All right, this is going to go. Phil, I'll get back to you. But the silent Googlers are people who you say something like, like when Brady threw 48 touchdown passes, and then somebody who disagrees with you, they don't say it. They don't say, oh, I don't think you're right. What they do is they slide the phone out, pretend they're texting somebody, Google it, and if you're wrong, they go, oh, actually, do you know, like as if they knew it the whole time. But if you were right, they just slide it back in in their pocket like they were texting the girl at Starbucks. The way that should work is you should have to throw the challenge flag, and if you were incorrect on your challenge, there should be some sort of penalty. There should be some sort of outstanding penalty.
I would look so bad. I would look like one of those coaches who burns through his challenge flags in the first quarter after how many times I do that with Grumpy or anybody else who on the show.
Oh, you'd be Andy Reid?
Oh, I'd make Andy Reid look like a Hall of Fame coach. Well, I guess he's a Hall of Fame coach. But.
So, like I said, Toews on a team who this guy Phil believes has such atrocious goaltending to the point it should remove them from Stanley Cup contention.
True.
So,
True.
so they're so bad. Their goaltending. Their goaltending so bad, and now I don't know because you've seen many mediocre goalies make a Stanley Cup Finals, that he still hasn't registered a minus. That's extra impressive if you believe that this goalie is so awful that he wouldn't be able to even make it to a Stanley Cup Final. He leads the league, if I'm correct, in power play goals per game because he missed some time for defensemen. Remember, power play goals, the thing that the orcs on Twitter said that he could never do? And on some nights, this guy eats close to 30 minutes per game. 30 minutes per game, a la Nick Lidstrom in his prime. And also, the previous, you want 30 minutes a game? There's one other guy who did that right there, Kenny Janssen. He was the only other person that I was just passionate about with the Islanders. Maybe Pierre Turgeon before that, but, I was too young. So once in a while, you're watching Toews approach 30 minutes per game. He received Norris votes last year and is clearly going to receive more Norris votes this year because his plays got even better, which is only his 4th full season in the league. Before the Olympics were canceled, he was considered for Team Canada. And anybody who tries to bizarrely tie his success to Makar's, that's the big move. Just like the Josh Bailey assist people. Like, oh, come on, you see those playoff points? He's a star. Oh, come on, Toews plays with Makar. They're all studs over there. Well, then just know that it is quite the opposite of that. Toews didn't start this year because he had a cleanup procedure. And look what kind of year your boy Makar was having while Toews was out of the lineup. And even more so, look how the Avalanche fared when Toews was out of the lineup. Under 500, and then they lost their MVP caliber player in Nathan MacKinnon. But they gained Toews at the same time they lost MacKinnon. And what do you know? Coincidentally, they end up going on a tear, which essentially they're still on. And Makar's numbers magically start jumping back to the levels you grew accustomed to last year. Hence, literally all of that justifying that wins above replacement statistic. The same one that Phil's Fiction at the time, who supposedly is into analytics, abandoned when I started laying the numbers on him. And then he went to he doesn't pass the eye test. So Mr. Analytics went to me that he doesn't pass the eye test. So literally Mr. Doogie Howser, when I present him some numbers, became Rex Ryan with the feet pictures. All right. Okay. But like I said, I want to, I feel bad. Phil, I have good news. All is forgiven because I watched you on this show that I've just hijacked and I'm just a full scumbag. I would never be upset if they never invite me again because of what I'm doing right now. But I got to see your face and hear you speak on this podcast. And, the big problem you had working against you is you were one of those guys, you had a big Barry Trotz icon as your fight. It's always a red flag, like somebody hiding behind like a coach's picture. But then what I realized when I got to see your face and see how you spoke, I know, then that's my realm. I can gauge people and it's not just clickbait. And I was fine with this. You couldn't let go of the Tampa series, which I'll be the first to admit Toews played poorly in. And then I never saw him play poorly after that or before that, but I'm okay with somebody who can't let go of a grudge. If that's what it is, fine. I'm actually fully cool with that. All right. A girl once told me that I used the word emasculated wrong, and I think about it once a day, every day. I'm still pissed off about it. Can't let it go for years. And so I understand what gripes are like. I know The Grudge. I got the DVD collection, even the original Chinese one. Okay. So I do want to say you're off the shit list. I like you after watching you on the show here, and especially because you admitted when TJ asked you, like, well, what do you think? He's a top defenseman. It was in a begrudging fashion, but you knew you had to admit it. And that is something they'll never do in the pot of misery known as Twitter. So me and you are cool, assuming you don't despise me after this rant.
See, Andy, that's what this whole show is about, bringing people together. Kumbaya. That's us in a nutshell. That's me. I'm so happy I could bring you and Phil /fiction/facts. I can't wait to have him back on the
Phil's
show.
facts. The minute he said that he answered TJ and said he is a top defenseman, he became Phil's facts once again.
Oh, there you go. And here's the thing.
He does that. He's one of the few guys out there
Phil
that
is cool.
if he ever has something where he's like, it's kind of questionable what he says, man, he'll own up to it. I mean, he's always very rarely
he seemed
that
like
happens.
such a nice guy. So
Yeah.
I
Great guy.
really feel bad actually right now. Once I'm an immediate regretter, by the way. Like sometimes I'll lay into people like, oh my
He'll laugh
God.
about that. He's got thick skin. I feel like he'll laugh about that.
Good.
Here's the thing that people forget about Devon Toews. When you mentioned Cale Makar, you realize that for all the Islander fans who are ripping Devon Toews for not being good enough defensively, okay.
Well, he was. Where does this come from? The one series?
It's right. It was one series. But here's the thing. Maybe he wasn't the best defensive defenseman out of all the other Islanders, but the fact that he learned under Barry Trotz, and we spoke about it when he was traded. TJ and I spoke about that night. I think we had an emergency podcast that night when he was traded. And we said, guess what? This kid is going to absolutely take off in Colorado. Why? Because he's perfect for their system and everything that he
Grumpy,
learned.
I got to stop you. This is the problem. You got to let this narrative go because I don't have a lot of time in my life, but this is one thing I'm going to commit to. It's the last Toews thing. I'm going to go through the games. All the things you're seeing in Colorado, you saw the game in transition. You saw him getting better on the power play. This was his second year in the league. Like he was so young. You look at Dobson,
agreement.
we're hoping he gets a little better. Toews was light years better than where he's at. And he was so young.
I'm not disagreeing. See, you didn't let me finish.
I know, because I'm a rat bastard.
I know. Well, let's just shut your mouth and let me finish. Okay. So here's the thing. But why does he look so good in Colorado? Because of all the defensive things he did learn under the Barry Trotz system, he's taken there. And that's what people seem to forget. Cale Makars is good because why? Because Devon Toews plays such good defense when they're paired up together. That's the reason why he can do his things because Devon Toews knows how to play the defensive end.
Grumpy.
I'm just agreeing with you.
Grumpy. Get this out of your head. No, it's not he learned. This is not the UFC. You don't go to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu place and learn how to put a triangle choke somewhere and then bring it to a boxing gym. No, he is a stud. He is a stud and his abilities will transfer to the Anaheim Ducks, the Ottawa Senators. He's fast, his reach, his height. You see him join the rush in these overtimes. Look how the Islanders struggle in overtimes. He is so much better than Pulock. It's a joke.
I agree.
It's a joke. And remember, well, you have to re-sign Pulock, but Toews, come on, cap casualty, Toews. It's just this guy here. When it was clear as day, he was a generational talent, and it's just so funny to watch it come to fruition. It's just so funny.
The guy they should have let go was Nick Leddy. That's the guy they should have let go. They should have moved him instead of Toews. Like I said, we thought it was a catastrophic blunder.
Anything.
And I agree with you.
Anything. If you got rid of Barzal, whatever the blowback should be, the problem is your average fan, like I told you this last time, they don't realize that Datsuk is a better player than Ovechkin. All they see are the one-timer goals. No, forget about all the other stuff. Doesn't matter. Penalty kill, power play, defensive. No, who cares? Who cares about all that? I want my big one-timer goals, like Grumpy on a Saturday night in the 300s. Like, but you know what I'm saying.
It takes all kinds. It takes all kinds. I'm so glad, though, Andy, that you have been able to keep your control today because we didn't think it was going to be possible, honestly.
Well, this will put a smile on your face here. This is, I think, the closest I've come to Oleg Kvasha smiling. I was trying to flip the image, but there are no pictures. I was scouring.
What happened to his eyebrows?
I was about to say
he went back to Russia and they took him.
They look blonde, I guess. He's got a little
blonde. They're blonde. They're there.
No, I remember. I've seen Oleg my whole life. He's got eyebrows. Did you see any Islander pictures on there?
I did, but it wasn't. I was trying to get one. This is the one he had the least smirk on. The other ones on the Islanders, he didn't look so happy.
He's never.
You did ask him, Andy. You did ask him to get a picture where he was smiling.
This is
so
the guy.
on you.
No, I just wanted a picture to show people how much he looked like the Penguin.
Oh, hold on a second, ladies and gents. I got one. It looks like
a little bit like the Penguin.
He is the Penguin. He's the Penguin. Yeah. While you pull it, I'll let people know. This guy, his helmet. Now he would be penalized every play. His helmet fell off every single shift, no matter what. Oh my God! Oh, that's a fresh Oleg. That's as good. That is as handsome of an Oleg as you will ever see.
I love the hair
by far.
Oh man, I'll tell you.
Oleg Kvasha.
Wow. That 51 points. 51 points when I think it was 2004. Something like that. He
it
led the
wasn't
Islanders
for
in
us.
points. Oleg Kvasha. Remember, 2004, 51 points was like 85 points. Now that was pure death, 2-line pass, clutch and grab, trap hockey. You know.
Let me ask you about this. There's a lot of social media attention and attention around Jacob Chychrun. And
Fun's all over now, Andy. Fun's over now. TJ's back in charge.
I'm back in charge, guiding it.
Good.
So,
We got to talk about something relevant.
Jacob Chychrun, and a lot of people think that he may be like helpful there and one of the key answers for the Islanders. They could solve again that issue there with fast or a steadfast defense and a guy who can go ahead and headman the puck and lead the offensive attack. Now, what's your opinion on Jacob Chychrun? I've heard people throwing out ridiculous trade scenarios. Art Staple was one of them, again, where the Islanders, in my opinion, are wildly overpaying. But it seems like some more people continue to adopt this ideology that we can give up a lot of pieces for Jacob Chychrun, and this would be a successful move for the Islanders.
Well, me out of sheer stubbornness, I could never do that, knowing what we got for Toews, even in the cap crunch situation. We gave up 2 second-rounders, but regardless,
no, we received.
You cannot. So if you're going to do that, you better have a proven talent who's going to be committed to you for a long term, like we did with Pajot a couple of years back. To give up a lot for some. I mean, did I also see that Klingberg was available?
Yeah, but
I've seen him lead the power play on multiple offensive, playoff teams, and he's somebody with this is crazy. You're going to leverage future picks and whatnot and prospects for the thing you had and let out the door.
Yes,
no,
that is exactly right.
Nope.
You'll be happy to see if you follow The Athletic. I think Corey Bromman, who does the reports of like the prospect pools, you'll be happy to see the Islanders, as I'm sure a shock to no fan or anybody who follows the team religiously. I think we're sitting at 31 out of the 32 teams in the NHL. The only team that had a more shallow prospect pool were the Seattle Kraken, brand new franchise. And again, those rankings are not end all be all, but
yeah, but you understand in one of those, if one player pops, it busts the whole thing. Like, you take years that we had so few picks. Like, let's say, how do you pronounce? You see the tweet that you have up there after Beauvillier. How do you properly pronounce that name?
Ratu.
Okay, well, yeah. So he slid in the draft, right?
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting a discount on him. Now, if he ends up being a great player, guess where we ranked going into that draft in terms of like draft capital and potential? Probably bottom. Okay, we didn't. Now, if one guy pans out in the draft, all of a sudden you had like the best draft. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you have a shallow prospect pool, if you get one or two people who make it out of there, you're fine. So I don't know. I don't put too much stake in, some random people ranking our prospects, because I'd like to see how their previous assessments were on, prospects and how it all panned out. Because that's one of those things you can say anything. There's no hard evidence as to if they're right or not.
They never do the follow-up. Hey, we had them rated XYZ. We thought this player
was... they did. And it was Scott Wheeler who wrote the article. Last year he had the Islanders 23, but then they had Wallstrom and Salo graduate. And I think and Bellows, because it's like 23. I think you have to be under the age of 23. I think that's their criteria. I mean,
it's not that, but just in general, don't give up. I would not give up a lot. No. How often do those trades work out when you see like a load packaged for somebody? How many times does the team usually go like, you know what? That was great. Even eventually, if you play hardball well enough, you saw Taylor Hall go for, and I know it's a rental, but for like a second round or a third rounder, and then you look what Eichel eventually went for. Think about what they were asking for and what they ended up getting. It's almost like in politics when they ask for these crazy spending bills and then they eventually like whittle it all the way down. I feel like that's where they're at. You can't be giving all this stuff. Are you nuts?
I don't think the Islanders are even going to entertain trading for him, honestly. And usually when those big trades are made, the guy who gets the best player is the guy who wins.
And what's the goal? What's the goal in this trade? Like,
So we could gut our franchise totally with any.
no, really,
talent.
really, no, really. So the people who support it, what would they say?
They like the fact that he's a cost-controlled defenseman who's on a little over $4 million a year for another 3 years, and they think this would help us elevate our game to where maybe we can be a playoff caliber team. So that's a whole different can of worms, right? We've had a conversation of,
well, I think that's,
are we buyers or sellers
crucial.
at the deadline?
Yeah, that's crucial, because if that's the case, like, if it's for this year, make sure you have a good team, because you can reevaluate that at the end of the season when all sorts of different things are changing. If you decide that you're a buyer and you want to sneak into the 7th or 8th spot, and do you want another 2 years of this guy? It's just a lot that you would have to factor in. I mean, I guess Lou really does make deals, and he ain't getting any younger, so it probably is a possibility, huh?
Now, he's had a really down year this year. Chychrun's had a really down year this year. So, and how great is he defensively as well? I mean, I know he plays for a miserable Arizona team, but he's a -27, and that's not good no matter who you play for. I'm sorry. He's by far has the lowest plus minus in the league.
That's it. They're not getting
let's
not waste time on something that is under probably 3% chance. Why don't we talk about the 100% chance of Kyle Palmieri remaining on the Islanders?
Just because he bought a house on the island, that means he's guaranteed to re-sign.
No, I mean, you want to talk about some generic creative player that I was talking about before. You can take that away from Bellows. And see, this is the good thing, by the way, TJ. How many times do you have someone on? You can go watch a rerun of The Price is Right. I'll be just fine down here, like the schizophrenic that I am, just yelling at Grumpy. But Palmieri, I mean, what a generic nobody that I'm watching out there. Just a nobody.
I can't even argue. You know what? I'd love to argue with you, Andy, but you're preaching to the choir here.
No, I know. So big ups on the pod, the original one. Me and TJ both were indifferent about it. It's just like, all right. I mean, I guess, they'd rather him than Eberle. Maybe he's a little tougher. I don't know. But man, this guy.
He sucks.
This guy.
I thought he fit the system better than Jordan Eberle did, and that's just
he does. He still does. And look,
he's just not very good.
Next year, he might even score 25. But it's just when you watch him, man, just slap any name, put any of these jerseys on him. He's just some guy.
He's a jag.
And I'm only going to say this because I have a big nose and my family is from there. But we got too many Italians on the Islanders. I mean, you got Palmieri, Parisi. It sounds like a deli order out there. It's just too many. There's too many.
You said he might score 25 goals, so I'm assuming that he's gonna get traded from the Islanders because it's the only chance he has scoring 25 goals ever again.
I'm just saying, like, if they just let him play next year with Lee and Barzal, he could get and then linger off to the side on the power play, and just. I mean, he has a good shot. I can see that his release is still very good. He has a good release on his shot. He's the opposite of Bailey, who can only pass. He has a good release on his shot. He can do nothing else. Literally nothing. He doesn't have Eberle's speed. He's not big, so it's not like he's, roughing people up in the corners and creating ruckus out there in an Andrews Lee fashion. So he's literally just some poacher.
He's for me, he's not afraid to go to the net. And as TJ said, he likes him because he hustles.
Okay. Don't oversimplify what I said. I thought that he was going to perform better than Jordan Eberle had. I thought he was a better fit. Eberle is a guy who is more tailor-made to a heavy forechecking team where he can skirt any type of defensive responsibility he had. Kyle Palmieri is a guy who didn't mind fighting along the boards and actually come back and play a little bit more of the two-way game. If you look at rep, then Jordan Eberle would have been received when he came here. So I thought he was a better fit. That's obviously not a good take. You're looking at best case scenario, right? He's been outplayed by Oliver Wahlstrom, I would argue, especially in the point department and offensive production. Josh Bailey is what he is. I mean, in the best case scenario, they're not.
What is that? Well, what is that? What
shouldn't be on the ice? Shouldn't be on the ice, but he's going to be. So it's one of those unfortunate items to where he could play miserably, but he will never be removed from the ice. And go ahead.
I just like how Kiefer Bellows has 3 times as many goals as he does.
Who?
Kyle Palmieri's only got 1 goal this year. Josh Bailey, 1 goal.
Well, Bailey you don't expect to score, but man, I used to say, wow, he's next level bad. But now
it's somehow another level on the next level. Like it's borderline funny. He's becoming, I don't want to use this term, but it's really just from a figurative perspective, he's like cancerous to the line he's on. If you want a line to go dry, did you just tell me to be quiet? Was that
that's exactly what Grumpy just says. He's weed killer. Or he's like, he kills lines. You go ahead and pick him up.
He's like Tony Montana in Scarface. He just kills every line that he sees.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have any miserable friends? I imagine you have a few, Grumpy. If you have,
I am everyone's miserable friend.
But there's a quality in individuals, and you get this. So you can have a group of fun people who emit a positive, great vibe, even if they have like negative things to say. But if they're still like that, they give a good energy. All it takes is one miserable person to come in, like a truly miserable person, and the energy gets sucked out of the room. Meanwhile, you could have a room of 20 miserable people, and you think one kind guy is going in there and putting a dent in that. Never going to happen. Well, he's the miserable guy in terms of his play who ruins the good energy in the room. Put him on a line, it will stop producing. He's the cooler. If you've ever seen the movie, like when you just put an unlucky guy next to somebody, he's the cooler.
That's right. And that was a good movie too. William Macy was.
You're the only person in the country who thinks that. You're the lone one.
Who? Me?
You're the only. I'm embarrassed to even know the movie, but I'm happy to know it's on your top 5.
I didn't say it was on my top 5.
I know. That's
all I said. Don't try to oversell your shit. All right.
Look, I told you when you said the gloves are off. Okay.
Here's the thing. But as Scott Levy, who's a longtime listener and contributor to the show, says, he calls him Josh Invisibailey. There you go. That's it right there.
Come on, TJ, pull a movie poster. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see Macy waiting at the table.
I'm out of my depth when we're talking movies. I don't watch any movies like that, and Grumpy's talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about movies. So it's nice to have somebody who watches movies on the podcast.
I'm a well-rounded individual. I'm filled up with useless knowledge, as the warden would tell you.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Man.
The warden is my wife, by the way.
Oh, well, TJ, have you ever seen Youngblood at least?
Yes, I've seen Youngblood. I watched it recently.
Okay. And you don't have to be like one of those people who lies out of embarrassment. You know that one, like, oh yeah, I've seen it. And then yes, like a scene, like, no, I kind of remember that. No, you don't have to do that. But I'm happy that you've seen it because
I thought Cynthia Gibb was hot in that movie.
So the funniest thing, and you see this a lot in movies when, especially with hockey, because, hockey, it always has been more of a niche sport. Now it's obviously more popular in the United States, but you would see things in movies that were just would never be depicted on the ice in real life. Yes. And the guy who is set out to take Dean Youngblood out was Racky. Yeah.
Carl
and
Racky.
When he went to fight somebody, he took his stick and he turned it in your face as if some jackknife motion was a signal to fight, and that was a real thing. So rather than just dropping your gloves, you turn your stick and just kind of do that. There it is. Yeah. And it was just so hilarious. So when my brother and I would always go, if we would go to the rink and play or something, we go, I'm going to carve you up, Racky, and turn the stick at each other.
That was Hewitt. That was the defenseman Hewitt on the Mustangs, who said, I'm going to carve you up, Racky.
Yeah, I tell you.
Good stuff, man.
So for the youngsters out there, enjoy yourself some Youngblood.
It's worth watching.
Tell me that's not a guilty pleasure movie. Every time it's on, I stop and I watch the end of that movie.
Dude, I got License to Drive over there, Revenge of the Nerds. I told you, I love 80s and 90s movies.
There you go.
So let me ask you this, Andy. I know you briefly touched on it before I had to use the pit stop, before I had used the bathroom break with the weak bladder. Now, let me ask you this. Grumpy wants to be a seller at the deadline. We have talked about on this next 11-game stretch, we would need a bare minimum 16, possibly 18 points out of the possible 22. Now, are you already at the point where you believe the Islanders should be a seller at the deadline? Because I think there are certain pieces on our team that could really get a large return. And if we're trying to retool, that could help us gather more draft capital.
So it kind of depends how you want to define like sellers. And also you also have to realize, like 30 games into a season, I had mentioned this last time, the season never ends. It never ends. Every team who's even pretty good usually goes on like some 13-3 run at some point. So that's going to come for the Islanders. But the big thing for me, like I do think they could get in, but when you actually just look at the road that would be ahead, you've taken for granted that you can just go on the road and win playoff series like we did against the Penguins and this is not an easy task to go 3 straight series and then in the Stanley Cup do it again. The likelihood of sneaking into that spot, and then you will have momentum if you want to like say like the Kings did when they won theirs as the 8th seed, but what an uphill battle. And I guess that will take me to something that I've always done, and I take credit for the Islanders going to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, and a couple people who are watching, if they are watching right now or when they do watch this, they'll know what I'm talking about. It's called the Scam Bracket. Now, on my podcast, I do a Scam of the Week, but before every playoff series would start, this started 2 years ago, the Islanders required Scam Brackets to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And when you remember there was the bubble, we were amongst the playoff teams who had to play a mini round against each other. But the top 4 teams simply played each other once, and then that determined the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed. So as these playoffs were happening, I was like, I don't know, you need Montreal to upset Pittsburgh, and what you really need is Philadelphia to go on a random like 3-0 start, so that knocks the Lightning out of our bracket, and then you'll get them in the second round after. And the whole scam required the Lightning being eliminated in the semifinals. And if they did that, the Islanders would have went to the finals. Every piece of the scam happened. Every last one. The Flyers ended up the 1 seed. It knocked down Tampa, which sent them to the Bruins bracket, but the Bruins couldn't come through for us. Now, last year, all season long, as you guys were watching, counting your shutouts against the Devils, all I was looking at was Florida and Carolina to make sure they ended up above Tampa, because our division was a scam in and of itself. And I still believe that there's not one good team great team in the Atlantic, or whatever the hell we are now, Metropolitan. However, on the other side, I knew if once we got through that, the winner of the other bracket would be waiting for us. And our only chance would be if Florida or Carolina did the dirty work, and that could only happen if they had home ice. Well, they both had home ice. Neither of them could knock off Tampa. And once again, the thing I was trying to avoid, Tampa in the Eastern Conference Finals, was our undoing. 2 years, the scam, and I got screwed in the end. And it's going to take something similar this year. The reason I told you all that is because you say, are we buyers or are we sellers? The only way it's worth it is if we weasel into the wild card that keeps us in our side, meaning you get Washington, who's the same old slow Washington who lost in 5, and they're racking up regular season wins like they did last year, out in 5 in the first round if they play a half decent team. If they play a bad team, then they'll be out in the second round. They're the same exact team. They're the same team requiring the same type of results from the same players. They're not deep. They're slow. They're going to lose. They're nobody to be scared about. So if you can sneak in our bracket and then play Washington and then play the winner of Rangers Carolina, you're fine.
Conversely, Carolina would never.
Carolina's a scam. Don't get me started. Every year, you bought it. You bought it. You bought the snake oil, just like everybody last year who said, no, they're going to be worried about. As soon as they play a good team, they're out in 5. They lost to 5 last year. They lost to 5 to the Bruins before that, and then they lost in 4 to the Bruins. Anytime, because face it, it's Aho. They lost Hamilton and the same group of okay players. When they play a great team, just like Washington, they're out. They're out. You heard it here. Not first, the 3rd straight year. Because every year I hear a person like you see Carolina? Yeah, I do see them. They're losing in 5 again. So go ahead.
The last time we beat Carolina? I mean, ever? Years? It's been years.
Oh, no. Oh, look.
Years.
Can they beat us? Yes, we're very beatable. But what I'm saying is there's a considerable difference between playing them and playing like a Tampa. We can beat them. Go look at the series. We had them on a disallowed goal game 1 every goal.
They swept our ass last time we played them.
That's a clickbait approach. There's no such thing as they swept. Right. They swept us. You lose by 4 goals a game.
Hold on. We won 4 games. They won 0. That is the definition of a sweep.
Yeah, but
they got the orange and blue glasses, Andy. Woo!
That's crazy. I'm the one who's you opened up this podcast with me saying the Islanders defense, you had to be blind to see how it declined. What I'm saying is game 1, it was 0-0, disallowed Islander goal. They lost in overtime to a bank-in. Game 2, had a lead, lost 2-1. These were all 1-goal tricklers. They could go either way. When you're looking at the series that they lost to Tampa, these are waxings. Like, they got swept the very next round. They got waxed. They were losing by multiple goals every game. That was a trickler series. You know it was. And just when you look back and say, wow, the Isles got swept. No, Pittsburgh got swept. We handed Pittsburgh a couple big losses,
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I've always thought with Carolina, just to give my point on it, I thought this year they were going to take a step back. I thought, okay, you're exchanging essentially Dougie Hamilton for Tony DeAngelo. That possibly cannot be a positive. They add in Kasperi Kapanen, who I was like, I'm not necessarily sold on him. You lose Nedeljkovic, who I'm high on, to Detroit, and you bring back in Frederik Andersen, who's had a miraculous bounce back. I mean, he's having a fantastic season this year. I don't know. It seems like every single offseason, I think the Carolina Hurricanes do something to get worse, but their regular season record indicates otherwise, and I think we don't match up well with them. These teams that are heavy forward check with a lot of speed, maybe we could go ahead and grind out a little bit in the playoffs because we can get away with some more clutching and grabbing because they, happen to put the whistles in their pockets. I think,
it's happened like that for years. I should send you, by the way. I know, because side point that this is from 2012. I recorded it. I don't know why. On my drives to work, I got pissed off because they were blaming Rick Nash for not scoring on the Rangers, and leave it to me to come to a Rangers defense. But they were acting oblivious to like the rules are the same. And I called up and I got through, and I go, oh, so you're just gonna neglect to mention how Crosby has like multiple 10-game pointless streaks and how they don't call penalties. And they literally just go, yeah, but they didn't have an answer. And then they just they literally like, yeah, it's a great point. On to the next caller. So for that point, and I'm not saying they're not better than us. What I'm saying, don't you dare put them in that like untouchable category. They are not a Colorado. They are not a Vegas. They are not a Lightning. They are 100% beatable. Okay.
So you think they're a little bit of a paper tiger? I think the Florida.
No. Once again, I think they are once again a paper tiger. Okay. For the 3rd straight year.
I think Florida, if they had Quinville, obviously items happen with Quinville, but I think if they had him, they'd be much stronger off. You look at that team and the production they've had. I mean, Bobrovsky has really come back in a big way, and Spencer Knight is fantastic.
Yeah. I tell you, with my brother, by the way.
Really,
my younger brother. Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Spencer Knight, like he always used to tell me about him through the years growing up because he was in the same year, like the same. That's how it works, like the 2000s, the 2001s, and he always used to tell me about him. And then when he got drafted, it was just so crazy how he came in and then immediately played well at such a young age. You never see that. But the Panthers, you saw this coming the same way you saw the Islanders decline in terms of defense. Like you saw the storm brewing, not in Carolina, coincidentally, but with the Panthers. Carolina, I just see the same exact team every single year. But Florida, when you watch them start to click and you watch those players and you see the goaltending, like they're trouble. They seem hell-bent on beating Tampa too, even more than us for a weird reason.
All I'm saying is if we have to play Carolina, we're losing that series. Now, I'm going to answer your question, TJ, which I believe was should we be
buyers or sellers?
Playoffs? Sellers, because we're not making the playoffs. No way on God's green earth are we making the playoffs.
30 games, dude.
I don't care.
30
Boston
games.
is back. Boston. Yeah, but we're 800 points out.
What do you mean Boston's back?
Boston's back.
The same one line.
Boston's back. They got 2. Now here's
just say a third time. That will make it more true.
It's like so true. So true. I'm going to bring you on at the end of the season when we're out of the playoffs and Boston's in, and you're going to say, I bow to you, Grumpy.
Oh, no. Look, we can clearly not make it, but it's not because of Boston. I mean, it's because they're just not they're not as good,
They're
unfortunately.
better than us. That's what I mean. They're better, and they're way ahead of us. Here's the thing. Talk about a hometown discount. Tuukka Rask took a 1-year, $1 million contract, so he's going to get paid $565,000. I mean, wouldn't you love to have him on your team for $565,000? I would.
Yeah,
I mean,
But it seems like it's one of those, like, okay, because he was working out with them the whole time. It kind of just seems like, hey, take it easy. Something tells me Krejci's going to do the same thing. They just have an old school like relationship with these old guys. I feel like Krejci's just going to come and sign. They're going to sign him mid-year. It seems like he was signed way before this in terms of like verbally, you know.
Krejci is playing in Czechoslovakia, wherever it is now. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, Czech. He wanted to go home.
The old Czech. And he is still commenting on the lines in Boston, the line combinations. So I think he really wants to be back there. Who knows, though?
Boston, they are what they are. They're a flawed team. A lot of teams are flawed teams. But
Yeah.
I look at the mountain we have to climb. And unless you come away with, I'm talking about significant points. And Phil's Facts brought this up to me, and I think it was a good point as well. He said,
he's real smart.
He is.
Oh, he's been fully reinstated.
He brought up that when Barry's, his mother died like that too. Usually you'll see like one of those when an item like that happens, usually it is able to galvanize the troops. It's able to get everybody headed in the right direction, right? We're coming off of a 12-day break. You've got Barry's mother, that additional motivation, right? You need to win games because of the position we're in, and now you have this extra to kind of join the troops together. So I wonder what it will look like. I can tell you this: if we come out of this 12-game stretch tomorrow and we lose and we don't look great, we have a lot of winnable games upcoming. If we don't come away with at least 16 points out of the possible 22, I'm writing the season.
I think it's 16 out of 20. Wasn't it 16 out of 20?
The funny thing is, I'm cool with saying yes to both of those. I'm cool with them going on a run and being sellers, smart sellers, like Varlamov. I still don't know if I should call him Varlamov, whatever. If he wants to correct me, he can.
Number 40.
But you want to sell him. This is smart. Think about what you do. You took an injury-prone backup from the Avs, and you brought him here to make sure that Sorokin got over here. So, yes, he played well last year. He played great in the playoffs. He played great versus Tampa the year before that. But really, more of a product. His resurgence was a product of the system, the same thing you saw with Leonard and everything. So now that you see Sorokin's ready to take the next step, if you get something, it's just good math, it's good business. If somebody wants him, but typically goalies are like running backs. Nobody ever really is willing to give anything for him. And
I was about to say, most times goalies are traded for in the offseason too. I think one of the guys, if we decide to move him, that could really get a pretty penny. And again, this is all indicative on what our offseason plan is too. If we're in, retool mode, I feel like Scott Mayfield could get a big return, even though he hasn't had a good regular season this year, didn't have a good regular season last year, had a fantastic playoffs. But I look at a guy who does a lot of clutching and grabbing, a guy who's a bigger body and, doesn't have much offensive acumen, but I feel like could get a pretty penny just because he's on such a cheap contract and has an additional year of term. That's a guy, first and a second bare minimum.
As we know, big defenseman who can, because he's fast. He's not slow. Like when you see when he scores the goal against Tampa Bay in the playoffs, and when he scored the goal against Philadelphia in Game 7, he's not lugging around out there. So I just would be, to lose, man, you can't make up defensemen like that. Please just say anybody but him, Pulak, and Pellick. We've already lost. It's going to be a nightmare trying to fill that. That's one I would have a lot of trouble moving him. I would. If we're keeping Trotz and playing the defensive system, he does clutching and grabbing, but until they change those rules in the play, he's effective every playoffs.
Yep.
Every playoffs.
Absolutely. And I look at it like this. You talk about a casualty to the cap. I know he doesn't score a lot of points, but this is a guy you have to figure, what is he going to be asking for at least $3.5 million when his contract expires next season? And if you're thinking to yourself, all right, we're going to have to sign back Matt Barzal in that same offseason. We want to make sure we keep him happy. We can keep him enthralled. I'm just adding up the numbers, and I think to myself, if Scott Mayfield, in an ideal situation is a bottom six defenseman or, top six defenseman, bottom line guy, $3.5, $3 million might be a little much there for the situation we're in. Again, he's a guy who effectively could crunch minutes, but if there's any other options, if we feel like Robin Sal,
If they do that, if they do that, go ahead and flush next year down the toilet too. It's just, who are these magic defensemen stepping in and eating minutes? It's so hard. Like, we took for granted having 6 defensemen, or at least I didn't. I knew it. And then as you see each one peel away, you see the Islanders' struggles continue. You opened up saying, wow, we never knew how bad Leddy was going to be. We never knew how bad. Well, you want to see it get even worse? How many times, how many stabs you want to take before you realize what's causing the bleeding? It ain't the forwards.
I have to question Andy. His girlfriend who lives in Canada, she said that he was absolutely taking for granted the 6 Island defensemen.
Oh, is that what it was, Grumpy?
Yes.
His Canadian girlfriend, the one that he never meets, right? Is that trying to?
Is that from Weird Science?
One of those.
Is that from Weird Science?
That's from Breakfast Club.
Gosh. See, if I understood the movie reference, I would have got it.
Go ahead, look it up, Breakfast Club. Don't ever doubt me on movies, ever.
No, because I'm not a silent Googler like TJ. So instead, what I'm going to do is a real coward move and ask him to Google it, since he already has that reputation.
And it was Anthony Michael Hall. Who had the fictitious girlfriend in Breakfast Club.
I'll make sure.
Please.
And he was in both movies.
I'm going Weird Science because he asked him to make a fake girlfriend, and he goes, well, what happened to your girlfriend in Canada? I'm giving you the exact scene. You want to know why? Because I made a parody of it that you can get on my YouTube right now, youtube.com.
Maybe they did it twice, but that was it.
They did it twice, the same exact thing in 2 movies
I
with the
remember
same guy.
They did it twice. I shit you not. So I'll pull it up here. We've got the one. Holy crap! As odd as that may sound, it is
bam.
Weird Science.
So I've got my essay written.
Okay, gotcha. We're gonna obviously have to fight through a few of those ads, but yes, they did it twice. I'll make sure I pull it.
And I've been working on it for about a week. So now I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly.
I could hear that. Well, regardless, you know what? I'm happy that we killed each other on that draw there.
Yeah, me too. It was cool.
Grumpy, like Biff 10 and.
We've got one. Yep, and there it is, and also in Weird Science there as well. So we've got the line in Breakfast Club, and I'll show you here also. Weird.
Hey, enjoy it while it's here, Grumpy, because I know Rob Shrimp ain't bringing in movie references.
That's
okay,
true. That's true, and neither is TJ. So I appreciate them. I really do.
Well,
I'm completely out of my waters when it comes to that.
No, it's all
out
good.
of your depth.
Out of my depth, whatever you want, Grumpy, saying analogy, whatever. What can I say? Oh, Grump, I forgot. We're about halfway through today. We're, more than halfway through today's podcast. Grump, what do we always do about halfway through the podcast?
You usually butcher an ad at this point in time, don't you?
That's right. So today's podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. Hockey fans, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has a no-brainer offer that will make you a winner once a single shot gets past the goalie. New customers can bet just $1 on any NHL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores. The NHL got rid of ties in 2005, so somebody's going to light the lamp. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, no worries. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code THPN and throw down $1 on any NHL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a goal. That's promo code THPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. You must be 21 years or older in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum of a $5 deposit and a $1 wagers required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And I have my lineups in for Sunday. I can assure you that.
Ooh, I was about to say, I tell you, got some good games, good matchups coming our way.
I do. I do also want to say to your listeners, I apologize. People come over, to this podcast to see, the hosts of this podcast, but I'm sick. Okay. I run my mouth too much. So if I've taken if I've eaten too much of the show, I apologize. This is why they only bring me on once or twice a year. Then I got to go back into my cage and yell by myself.
It's like an off day for me, honestly, which is cool.
Grumpy, man. You got to get out of here. But yeah, I tell you, this is It's an unfortunate time period, I think, to be an Islander fan. Now, let me ask you this, Andy. You see a lot of fans and
Yeah,
a lot
try
of
1995.
you see a lot of fans and you see a lot of people saying, and I want to pose it as unbiasedly as possible, saying that this year is an off year. It's just a fluke. Don't worry. We'll be back next year with the same cast and crew. We'll be ready to go. We can win this year with COVID, the long road stretch. It's just a one-off. This is just a one-off year, and there's no need to look and see if there's an actual deeper seated problem by trying to dig through everything of the Islanders. They say this is a one-off. Do you believe this is a one-off, or do you believe there's a deeper seated issue?
There's definitely a chance for that. The classic Tampa Bay Lightning just tank 1 year or get Victor Hedman, and then they're right back to deep playoff runs, which was one of the biggest scams you've ever seen, and they somehow magically pulled it off. I think there is the chance of that simply.
Didn't they draft
What?
Stamkos #1 the year before that?
Yeah, and then they got
No, they drafted Stamkos. Stamkos scored like 60 goals like 3 years before that, I think. No, he got drafted behind Tavares.
Tavares was Hedman. I thought Stamkos was the year before.
He was 2007, right? Oh man, my memory. I'm sorry, I don't want to derail
because they went to anyway.
I thought they were
because
back
they went.
No big.
I had mentioned this on the previous podcast. When you look at all the teams, the great majority of the teams, other than us and the Vegas Knights, and obviously Tampa, like the amount of wear and tear and high emotion games and everything the Isles went through the past 2 years, other teams conversely didn't even have like a seat. Like you take a team like the Rangers, who are playing well this year. They went into the bubble, played 3 games or whatever it was. Then they left, shortened season, missed the playoffs, another extended off season. These guys are extra juiced. Our team is like a depleted Mega Man character. We like have no juice, and you felt it. You felt it from day one. They couldn't get it up, like they just couldn't. They didn't match other teams' energy, and there's a weird part of me that doesn't blame them. It's just hard to keep that up. And when you couple that with the issues that the Isles are dealing with from a personnel perspective, yeah, it's rough, but it makes me think, without like blind optimism, that the team is significantly better than it is demonstrated so far. And I think that is indicative with all these players who have been on these multiple deep runs, just showing the wear and tear that's been on their bodies,
I think we have no shot of returning to our recent glory days because the most of our core pieces are well into their 30s, and they're just not going to get any better. Period. They've regressed, and you don't come back from that type of regression. Not over 30, you don't.
The only thing I worry about when you talk about regression is I think there are reasons to be optimistic about the future, right? If we integrate guys like Bellows and Wallstrom, give them the adequate amount of time they need, I think that's good. It's a positive. The only time I think that it could slow the team down a bit is if we say, even next season, right, we're not going to give Oliver Wallstrom top 6 minutes, which would be mystifying, to say the least, if we're still rolling him out there on the third line. I mean, Brock Nelson's played well. Anders Lee has played well for what they do, right? Anders Lee's obviously limited in his skill set. He's a fantastic trash man, the best trash man in the NHL. Fantastic at, screening goalies, fantastic at, fighting the dirty fights. He's done a much better job of that this year than I think he did 2 years ago. And last year he did a good job of it too before getting injured. But I mean, Brock Nelson has played well. But when I look at those guys, I think to myself, when do they start to hit a little bit of the decline? I know we have players that are on the rise, but we will all admit, I mean, Matt Barzal is what Matt Barzal is. I'm not expecting him to take, another step into being, a franchise caliber player to where he's, the top 5, top 10 player in the NHL. I just don't see him making that step. And when I watch, Beauvillier this season, he's been extremely cold. He just looks to be, a streaky third line winger on a really good team.
You got to give him another chance though. Like, you just have to. The fact that he's shown us what he's shown, and he's one of the few young pieces we have, and we've seen his upside. He's got to be a part of the future, like at least to give a shot for like another year. Like, you don't just chuck someone like that, for the most part, unless it's really, really worth it. Because anyone can be dealt with if the price is right. But one thing that you can't just overlook this, go look at other teams. They can't roll 4 lines who can score. And yes, the Islanders are struggling, but what their strength is when they get to the playoffs, which is why Tampa admitted the one time they really felt vulnerable was against the Islanders this past year. Maroon said they didn't know if they were going to win Game 7. It's because when you look at like their third line can score. Yes, everybody's cold, but like the fact that it was like at one point Padjo, Wallstrom, and Palmieri, other teams don't have third lines like that. I was looking at the Rangers roster last night. You get past 4 forwards. Who are these guys? And this is what was the Bruins' undoing and will be their undoing again. This is why Washington gets wiped out. You forget how valuable something like that is come playoff times. Yes, times are tough and they're struggling, but you can't just dismiss the fact that they have 4 lines, and during the season it's 3 because the 4th line, the way they play, doesn't translate in the season. But the same way Mayfield's play translates in the playoffs, their play translates in the playoffs and actually can shift momentum in games. That's what they're still doing, that 3-second lines thing. And I can't say I hate that because it's effective. The only problem is you just got to get to the point where you can use that in the playoffs. So, but like, don't just discount like we're just a bunch of bums out there. Go look at other teams' rosters.
I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried. When I see most teams are structured where top 2 lines do all the scoring, bottom 2, those are going to be more your skilled specialty players where you're playing penalty kill minutes, you're eating minutes, etc. And what a lot of teams will do is, towards the NHL trade deadline, they'll add a guy who may be a top 6 forward in some capacity on a lesser team and put him on that third line. I'll be like, oh, this is a great job. Hey, they brought in Derek Brassard. Great job on the trade deadline. Hey, they brought in a Jeff Carter. Great job at the trade deadline. Items like that. And I think it's always easier when you've got elite talent that is focused on scoring on your top 2 lines that are able to produce. If you have, third and fourth line production, that's fantastic. But I mean, a 4th line this year, and even in the playoffs, if we make it, I don't think is producing like they have in the past. I might be wrong, and I hope I am if we make the playoffs. But in the third line, I worry. Jean-Gabriel Pageau to start the season was a little slow out of the gates. He's a guy who plays a lot of tough minutes, and I always wonder, I'm like, when are they going to start to take that regression? We talked about you're always in the playoffs, you're playing long games. The last 2 seasons have been that shortened season, truncated season by COVID, and I wonder now with the 82-game season how a team with littered with 30-plus-year-olds is going to be able to hold up when we already have a mountain decline.
We don't have to worry. To me, we don't have to worry about that because we're not making the playoffs. We'll play 82 games this year, and then we'll get ready for next year.
That was my answer as to why we don't know for certain. That's why we don't know for certain if this is a team that will come back next year. I'm telling you, you do not see 4 lines like this. Like even Tampa had to chuck their third line because of salary cap casualties.
But look what they did.
I would definitely. But I mean, are you guys?
They picked up 3
you guys
guys.
are acting like Twitter people. No. That's it. So back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, fire trots, get rid of this. I can't handle it. Like okay. If you would have canceled Seinfeld after the first tough season.
Okay, first it was only 4 episodes the first season. Okay, Seinfeld was only 4 episodes. The Seinfeld Chronicles was only 4 episodes. Here's what I think they should do, Andy. I think, and everyone who listens to this podcast knows, I think they need to take a change in direction with the team to incorporate the younger players at the expense of older ones. That's what I say the rest of this season should be, because I want to find out who's going to be part of the solution going forward. This iteration of Islanders with this veteran-laden team is over. It's over. If you just want to keep on throwing good money after bad, it's a mistake. So what I say to Barry is, this is what I want you to do, Barry. I want you to play the young guys rest of the year. And that's the direction we're going. We're going younger. We're going to start jettisoning some of the older players. And are you into that? And if he says no, I say bye-bye. If he is, keep him.
Grumpy, I hate these blanket statements. You just got to chuck all the old guys. What does that even mean?
Means that
player by player, break it down. Josh Bailey, he's hurting the team. Get him off the team. He's awful. Put in a young player. Like Brock Nelson, still playing well, still a contributor to the team. He makes the team better. Like that's how you fix it. You don't just throw one answer on everything. Like you don't just chuck, if you're over 30, you're out. It sounds like guys I know with dating.
Next year, you'll have 9 guys in your top 12 skaters who are 30 or older. That is not a recipe for success. It just isn't.
Okay, but like I said, like take it player by player.
We're not going to re-sign back. I don't think so. At least some people are opining that yes, we will sign back Hal Clutterbuck. He's had a good season. Like when I look at how the team's structured, the first line is what it is. We still need a first line right wing. We've needed it for quite some time. Anders Lee's going nowhere, and I have no issue with it. You've got probably about a good solid 2, maybe 3 years left before I think he really starts hitting the bad side of 30. Brock Nelson is more than competent as a second line center, plays that two-way game, no issues with it.
Competent. Fall off in 2 years. I mean,
Just
I
gotta
don't
be
know.
careful what you ask for. First of all,
I
we're
know
a disgraced
exactly what I
organization.
blow it all
We're a
up.
disgraced organization for multiple decades, and now all of a sudden we're so greedy in that we don't like the fact that after back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, we got into a slow start on a shortened offseason. Really, Grumpy.
See, here's my initial plan. Here's the thing. When my initial plan, when Trotz and Lamarillo came
Jesus
in,
Christ, come
this
on.
is my. You could Jesus Christ all you want, DJ. This was my initial plan. When they came in, we were so downtrodden for so long that I think the fan base would have said, okay, if Lou Lamarillo came in and said, we're going to do a full rebuild with Barry Trotz as the coach, me as the GM, I think the fans would have bought into it just because of the cachet that those two men had. I really firmly believe that. And by now, the team would be on the upside as opposed to on the downside. That's all.
Yeah, here's the problem. You have no evidence of this other than just what you're saying would have happened. We have no proof of this. All we have of proof is the actual thing that happened, which if I would have presented to you at the beginning, you would have been crying. You actually would have got off that couch, which I've never seen, and jumped for joy, like Grandpa Joe in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You would have got up and started singing with the bucket and the mop and doing a whole thing if I gave you back-to-back Eastern Conference championship or
no, not even Eastern Conference championships. We just made
appearances. Oh, well, okay. What are you? You're the guy who wears the Eastern Conference title hat
in COVID years. If we didn't have COVID years, first year we don't even make the playoffs, and last year, if we put a full season, we fell apart at the end.
Okay, we still would have made it last season. Here's the item, and I think, and don't get it. I think we got to not get it twisted. I think that there needs to be a retooling. And when Grump says aged veterans, there's certain guys we're not moving, and I don't think we should. I don't think we should move Anders Lee, even though that contract is going to be hideous towards the tail end. You're looking at an Andrew Ladd 2.0. As I was about to say, you can't move it if you want to. He's got to agree to it anyway. Brock Nelson's not going anywhere. Neither should he. I mean, Josh Bailey, you would have to give up something to get rid of Josh Bailey. And at that point, I'm not sure we even need to explore that. Maybe just go ahead and healthy scratch him if you have additional options. Again, but if Holmstrom shows anything that he could as a right wing there, maybe he could slowly integrate himself in the lineup. I'm just saying.
Josh Bailey 2.0.
Okay, gotcha.
Just think about it, man. Just think about if they didn't protect Clutterbuck, and they protected Eberle. Even if you hate Eberle, it would have gotten rid of the contract and the player because they were supposedly between the two, which means they bought into it. And now the jig is up. Now, like you said, you have to pay somebody to take him off your hands.
And when I look at it too, right, we're going to have Zach Parise will not be back next season, nor should he. So you're going to have a third line left wing position open. I'll be interested to see what we do with that open spot. Do we go ahead and give that to Bellows on a full-time basis, or do we look for Mr. Outside Hire? I think on the fourth line, Matt Martin needs to be done. I love Matt Martin. He's, blood and guts, one of the heart of the team. But, what I've seen out of him recently, I'd rather see Ross Johnson in a consistent role than him. The consistent re-signing up of the good old boys, like with Casey Cizikas. What I saw out of Austin Zarnak over the past 4 or 5 games showed me that he was a more than competent fourth-line replacement for Casey Cizikas, albeit Cizikas has not played great this year, but I liked what I saw in Zarnak. And where does he fit into the equation now? We've already got our fourth line filled. Zarnak, I think, is a good fourth line guy or could step up. And instead, we're paying our fourth line guy, $2.5 million a year to keep him?
For 6 years.
Yeah, you're also paying that to Hickey. So, like I told you last time, $2.5 million. If somebody's playing, then you don't really need much out of him to make it worth 2.5. Like 2.5. I think the Leafs are still paying that to Phil Kessel on their books this year. So it's like,
I mean, for me, most of these contracts, Lou Lamoriello has self-inflicted on himself, honestly, by signing guys who are in their 30s to long-term deals. That's my one rule, my one steadfast rule. Unless you're a superstar, you are 30 years old, go walk if you get a big deal. I'll sign you for a couple of years at low money, but I'm not giving you 5-6 year deals. It's just not happening. I mean, let somebody else waste their money on somebody like that. And you say about third and fourth liners. You realize third and fourth liners are just imminently replaceable. They're bottom 6 guys. What we need are top 6 players. You mentioned about Kiefer Bellows perhaps playing on the third line. His skill set is that of a top 6 winger. Don't try to jam him into something that he's not going to be effective at. He's taking off. For me, he's been taking off because he's been playing on a scoring line. That's why his game is picked up.
Oh, 100%. But the Islanders, like TJ mentioned, they're not structured like a traditional team. They roll out each line, and it's it. It's a constant rotation, and that does usually pay dividends in the playoffs. But it's not like, all right, well, most teams, you drop somebody to the third line, that's a checking line, and they can't flourish. I agree with you. The Isles are a weird team. You could be playing with Pajot and Wallstrom on the third line.
But Wallstrom shouldn't be a third line player either.
Oh, look, I agree with you. Obviously,
that's what I'm saying.
Had Komarov out there, that was wild. That was wild.
But see, that's the Barry Trotz way, right? That's a Barry Trotz. He wants everyone to be. I think what he'd really love is to have 4 grinder lines. He doesn't care about offense. He'd rather just have 4 lines that he knows exactly what we're going to do every single time. Maybe catch a team on a counter break. I think he hates Matt Barzal. He hates his creativity. And I mean, if there's a way they could trade him, I think they would.
Stop. Okay, I can't let you continue on that point. But anyway, that being said, like when we talk about
too much talent for Barry to handle.
When we talk about restructuring, adding a little bit more youth in it, I mean, Ross Johnston's no spring chicken. The guy's a vet in the league, but he needs to be playing over Matt Martin. When I look at Casey Zizekas, right, and he makes $2.5 million, but I just haven't loved what I've seen out of him.
6 years, though, TJ. For 6 years.
5 more after this year. So what we're talking about is
so
this
he'll be
year.
36 years old when his contract
What
is
we're talking about is this year going forward. How can we go ahead and integrate? How can we go ahead and integrate some of the youth that you wanted to? Again, I don't think you're doing a good job of articulating, so I will for you. I think I understand what you're saying. So the right wing spot on the fourth line, that again does not need to be Kyle. That does not need to be Cal Clutterbuck going forward. I think that if we could do, I'm not saying we have to completely rejuvenate and say, hey, everybody over the age of 30, pack your bags. You're headed somewhere else. That's not what we're going to do.
Like Logan's Run. I want it to be like Logan's Run.
Stop. I don't know what that is, but I assume
anybody over the age of 30 dies. That's Logan's Run.
I don't know what.
Michael York.
Sounds like my dating life.
I
had to do it. Oh yeah, to that scumbag who just said that I'm taking layup jokes on the show. Well, did you like that one? And appreciate the last guy who said he enjoys my podcast and the scam of the week. And it wasn't 4 a.m. pizza. It was 4 a.m. calzones by myself on New Year's Eve. I said, if you ever want to feel depressed, eat calzones by yourself at 4 a.m. on New Year's Eve to start off that New Year's resolution of dieting the way it's supposed to be.
It's better than being hammered drunk, passed out in the ditch. So, there always could be worse. So, but, I think there's a good way and a happy medium to find for everybody. I think that what we've seen out of some of these players should give hope. And, with Sorokin, I've loved what we've seen out of him. You talked about he's really taken the next step forward. I know you could kind of still pick spots on him, but the guy, I think, shows all the signs of being a fantastic. I mean, he could be a top 5 netminder in this system. There's no doubt in my mind, and on the defensive side of the puck, we do have holes and gaps, right? You're going to have definitely Chara and Green gone next year. If you move a guy like Mayfield, you'd have another spot to fill as well. I think, and I think that Salo is
the whole defense you'd have to fill. Like
I don't think the shoes are too big to fill for Chara Green has. He silently plays very well. You don't expect any offensive production out of Andy Green, but again, he's very consistent on the back end. Chara has just been abominable. I love him. And we started off the season. I tried really tough. I tried really hard. I said, you're never going to see me besmirch his name. You're never going to see me talk poorly about Zdeno Chara. The guy's an absolute legend, first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll be the only one of his type that ever plays the game. That size to play as well.
So is the Undertaker, but eventually when he's 64 out there still fighting WrestleManias, you got to say, look, man, come on, we gotta really, you're actually gonna die like the Undertaker if you keep doing this. Like
Ric Flair.
Yeah.
So and that's where we've gotten to.
In peace.
That's where we've gotten to. I don't think the hole's too big to fill for Chara. I am interested to see. I mean, Robin Salo gets a lot of hype. I've liked kind of what I've seen out of him. Makes a lot of coachable mistakes, but he's the guy where he needs a cup of coffee. He needs some time up there.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see, are we going to utilize him a little bit more going forward? Once the season's past the point of no return per se.
Yeah.
Yeah, me, I'm like this. Bailey, pull. Lee, pull.
So let me ask you, what would you, because you're going to have to give up something to get rid of Josh Bailey in his contract. It's not like
crazy.
We've given up other things. We've given up. Here's the thing. He brings nothing to the roster. Why not just bury him?
The only reason we can't do it is because we could have done it for free. And then it's almost admitting how much of a failure you are. And you, as a GM, you can't do that. If you gave somebody, like, because there was proof. It was between him and Eberle. So if you chose to keep him and then you give him away, well, then again, I guess it's like he made him available, which is essentially saying he knew.
If you have that much of an ego, if you have that much of an ego as a GM, and I don't think Lamoriello does, and I don't think he even has to. He has so much cachet. You just admit your mistake and move on.
How many? I'll wait till TJ comes back, but I wonder how many more years he has again.
I think until he wants to leave.
No, but like actually,
actual contract. I think another year.
Is it
another year?
If it's only one, I mean, he is.
I don't want to see Fredo come in and take over the job from his dad. That's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see Fredo Lamoriello come in and be the new GM. That's the one thing I don't want. I mean, anything else I can live with, not him. I don't want to see
Grumpy. You are, and trust me, it takes a lot for me to say this. But you're pretty miserable in terms of your disposition. I mean, it's almost like you don't remember what happened between 1994.
I do remember.
I do, so it's like,
here's what I remember though.
It's very delicate to be a winner. Like don't just start when you beg for a winner and somebody comes in and they start doing that for you. Don't start, getting angry at the king for doing the things that you were begging for and now have in your society.
Here's where I'm different. I remember the glory days. You don't. You're still a young pup. I'm sure you weren't even alive when we were winning Stanley Cups.
I get it, but those are two different leagues. Now you sound like Butch Goring, whose answer is to throw everything at the net like it's 1981 when Wayne Gretzky could score a wrist shot from the blue line as a goalie stood up and tried to kick his foot at it.
You're putting words in my mouth. You're putting words in my mouth. All I said was, if we're not good enough to win a Stanley Cup, we need to change direction. We need to get better. When over half your team is over 30, that group is not winning a Stanley Cup. That is my goal. That should be.
So how did that team come within a goal of it?
What team?
Like the same team that we're running out there for the most part. Like the
we
whole
didn't come
point
with goal winning a Stanley Cup. We came within a goal of advancing to the Stanley Cup. We didn't come within a goal.
We would have beat Montreal. And
woulda, coulda, shoulda. You never know.
Here's the thing. Here's Grumpy's counterpoint. We were outscored 21-11 in that series, so it's really deceptive.
I never thought we ever had a shot.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
We would never be.
No, that's fine though. Tampa is literally dynasty. They've won 2 in a row, and before that, they broke the record for best record in a regular season. Like they're that level nasty, and we're the closest they've come to losing. And to say everything should be torn to shreds, it's just very, from an old school guy from the 80s who would probably have a little patience. You're going straight Gen Z, tear it to the ground. It's wild.
See, I'm teared to the ground because we're not good enough to win. But see, a lot of people like you, Andy, a lot of fans like you. Oh, we're happy. We came in second in our conference.
Because I've really exuded happiness on this podcast.
That's good enough. Second's good. We're competitive every year.
Here's the thing, man. It's not all black and white, Grump. There is some gray, believe it or not, mixed in. So, I'll say it again. I honestly believe that this offseason, there's no way you could call the prior 2 seasons a fluke. And, you're in either one or two camps, right? The prior 2 seasons were a fluke or this year is a fluke. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of people line up with, hey, this is just, this is a wash. Don't worry about it. We'll be back next year with maybe a minor adjustment or 2 and we'll be there. I still think there's massive improvement to be had. Regarding adding a top line right wing. Oh man, if Vladimir Tarasenko was honestly there and we ever explored the opportunity to talk with him, I know mentioned in the offseason, I just feel like we were robbed. He would not have loved him. He would not have been a fix to all of our problems, trust me. but he definitely would be a step in the right direction. And
really what it was, man, it's just the juice. Like the Isles, they're just, especially in the beginning of the year, they were not playing hard. They looked like a team who went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they looked like the Chiefs did at the beginning of this year. They started 2-3. They didn't have the juice. Like, they don't have the juice, and we're only in like week 5 or 6 of the NHL season in terms of how long it is. See if they said they're 30 games in. There's 52 games or something left. Let's see if they could freaking win a couple games. Like, it's unbelievable.
I give it this next 11 game stretch. 10 of them are at home. They're all very winnable. The majority of them are very winnable games. If you don't come out here and look like you are, top shit, the king shit, that's it.
I'm with you. I'll sell certain pieces. Like my garage sale is a little more limited than yours, though.
Grumpy, I think, says that, but I'm more of a, hey, we've got to retool. Grumpy's always been Grump's been since even the start. He's been below up.
When Lamoriello, that's right. When Lamoriello and Trotz came in, I was in. Let's do a rebuild with some professionals in charge. That was my whole thing. I have no problem with that. I had no problem going.
Never signed up for a rebuild. You know that. I know that. Neither would have Barry. Come on.
Why? If your team has been in rebuild mode for the last 30 years, what does 3 more matter?
Probably getting to 100 points and getting home ice in the first round of the playoffs and showing success. That's probably what put them into win now mode.
Think about this: a legitimate head coach, and Barry Trotz is a top 5 head coach in the NHL. We may have issues or spot issues sometimes with his, undying devotion to playing veterans as opposed to guys who may be younger that are performing just because they're a little inconsistent and have coachable mistakes. But he's a top 5 coach in the NHL, and you saw with almost the exact same roster from the year before, minus a piece or two, you were able to see that they make the playoffs 3 years in a row. They got beat. They won one round the first year, got to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, they have, an excellent coach, but I feel like, it shouldn't be so stark of a difference, right? We shouldn't be all defense all the time. We have to be bottom 5 in goals against, and, we're bottom of the table in goals scored. I'd like to see a little bit of I'm a fan who likes to watch an interesting game. And we've talked about this before. The team is not a fun team for a casual fan to watch. You either have to be doing one or two things to keep fans happy. You have to be entertaining on the ice, which generally speaking we're not, or you have to be winning games. Right now we're not doing either of those, which I think riles up and angers the fan base even more.
Yeah, well, I'll use the last team he coached as an example. Well, you had Alex Ovechkin scoring 60 goals before Trotz got there. He got there, it literally went down to 30 every year. Like 30, and then we're like, it's going to go down. Guy leaves, he's in his mid-30s, goes back to scoring 50 and 60 goals. So they've won 0 playoff series. You have to ask yourself, what do you want? And like a teenage girl, are you going to be the one who just doesn't have a good answer for you? Or do you want to be entertained? This reminds me of the people in LA. Like, it's not enough to win. You got to win in style, and celebrities got to be in the first row. When you lose for years, take your way. We're the New York Islanders. We wouldn't even be given a parade in Manhattan. They would shove us down Hempstead Turnpike past Chuck E. Cheese and Taste of Honey. So, the thing is,
hey, Grump, I don't know if you understand. You ruin the audio when you speak over someone else. So let's try to contain it, huh?
Reprimanded. But like,
I could just turn my mute button on. It's fine.
I'm just saying how quickly you can go from like taking a roster that was awful, going from the bottom defense in the league. We were the worst defense in the league. We're so quick to point out all those jumps. How about that jump? Worst defense to the best defense, 100 points, win a playoff series. So after that, 2 straight years of Eastern Conference Finals, tough start. Let's blow it all up because there's people over 30 and I'm not happy. I don't like parking at the new arena. That's it. Like, I don't know, man. You're greedy. You change your name. You're the greedy old man.
I want to ask this too, and this is for you as well, Grump. Now you talk about Washington, how they haven't won a playoff series since Barry's gone. I actually put more blame on Todd Reardon than I do on Barry's success. I think Reardon was a completely incompetent coach, and I understand Laviolette did not win last season. I'll be interested to see what they do this year, right? If Laviolette comes out there again, doesn't win a playoff series, then I start adding a little bit more chips, and Barry was fantastic for them. Boat, because remember, before Barry got there, they could never win the big game, and he took Barry 5 years really to get the movement going in the right direction. Because Grump, I don't know, what did they consistently lose to Pittsburgh on a year-end.
That was tough. They lost to well. Remember, they played each other 3 times, and the winner of that series won the Stanley Cup each time. It was the awful division style of playoffs now, where the top 2 seeds had to keep playing each other in the second round. That should have been the Eastern Conference Finals every single year, but because of the way they structured the idiotic playoffs now, where you have to play people in your division, you get the best 2 teams playing each other unnecessarily in the second round. So the winner of that series would just go beat the crap out of whoever was left and then win the Stanley Cup. And it happened 3 straight years. It's hard to say. Like what Trotz got, with Game 7 loss against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a mini dynasty, then they beat them. Caps, they were just like the Lightning. They were a bunch of close calls, and then they didn't give their coach a chance to come back and try to repeat.
Yeah. Grump, what are you going to do? You're going to sit there on mute the whole
Am I
rest
allowed to talk now, TJ? Let me know when I'm allowed to talk.
He had that. TJ, he's been waiting for
TJ,
that. He was waiting for you to say
I'm allowed to speak.
You're allowed to talk. Again, you don't ever listen to the podcast and post, so mind you, the way StreamYard runs. When
you just let me know. From now on, this is what I want you to do. You point to me anytime you want me to talk. How about that?
I don't understand why it couldn't have been held till afterwards, after the comment. Then you could have done it.
Because Andy goes on for 5 to 10 minutes at a time.
Oh my God!
Forget my point by then.
It gargles the audio. That's what I'm saying. It makes it tough for people when they listen to the podcast format afterwards. I'm not trying to come at you. I apologize if it came off like that. It just gargles the audio. I know you don't listen to it afterwards. It makes for a bad listening experience. At least that's what I've noticed. So you're allowed, Grumpy. You're allowed to speak, man. Come on now. You're not one of.
I'll take responsibility too. I'll take responsibility too for my 10-minute rants.
I can't remember every point that he makes. He goes on for and ever and ever and ever. I told you I should have got the scissors out to cut him off. He said no. Okay.
Gosh.
So here's the thing. The first one. I don't want to hear the woe is me, Islander fan. We're this, we're that. No. I don't care about that. If you want to be a major league franchise, win games. That's what makes you a major league. Don't play the sympathy card. Don't play the victim card like a lot of people like to play these days. I don't want to hear the victim card because we're Islander fans. That's number one. Then number 2, Washington, obviously, even though he won a Stanley Cup, they made him play the young players the last year because he was on his way out. And they had no interest in keeping him as coach, Barry Trotz. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. What I'm saying is he's just rock solid in what he wants to do, and it's not conducive to winning unless somebody has to step in and force his hand. And hopefully that's what we're doing here. That's all I care about.
Okay, for that guy, just because I hate when people selectively take your words. I compared his defense to Chris Campoli, Dobson's defense to Chris Campoli's, not his offense. Although Campoli was actually pretty decent offensively.
And I tell you now, this is, and Grump and I agree on this point here. If Barry integrates some of the, and that's why I said this next stretch is one of the most telling stretches I think we're going to see under the Barry Trotz era. In the past, we could say he hasn't played the young guys because they haven't shown that they deserve a chance just quite yet. In limited sample sizes, playing, heavily monitored minutes and heavily, reduced shift time. You could say the young guys haven't performed. We've seen young guys perform with adequate time on ice and given the opportunity. Are we going to see them, let's say if there's one poor game, are we going to see them immediately yanked out of the lineup, and are we going to see the return of your Kyle Palmieris because Kiefer Bellows has one bad game, or Oliver Wahlstrom struggles in transition and makes a bad turnover in center ice? Are we going to see an immediate knee-jerk reaction and switch back to the way things were? If we continue to let things ride and we say, hey, I like what they performed, I'm going to give them another 3-4 game stretch, I think that speaks volumes, and I will easily recant anything I'd said about his slavish devotion to playing old veterans, because he's showing signs that he is willing to adapt if he sees a more viable option on the ice. I don't think he will, but if he does, I'm 100% wrong.
So my point on what to look for in this next stretch and to gauge their success as you're watching these games at home, pay attention to see if the opponents are being held to under 30 shots. If they do that, I believe you're going to see a direct correlation with Islanders being able to stack wins. If you see over 30, you may see some more of this 500 stuff. When you see a stretch of games, 5, 6, 7, where the shots against are 24, 26, 28, 24, 30, you're going to see a stretch of Islander wins. And until then, until they address the core of how they're built and how they've won in the past, you will see more of this flapjack up and down, winning and losing. That's my personal opinion and what I believe you should be closely looking at when you're checking those box scores after the game.
Absolutely.
Fair.
Grump, any response?
Grumpy, I know.
I don't even remember what your question was, TJ. It was so long ago.
I think
went on forever. I don't even remember what your question was.
Hey, man.
I think he was just given like a generic. It seemed like, I don't know, maybe if I'm reading it wrong, but just kind of like what to look for in the kind of immediate
stretch, seeming that we're kind of getting towards
okay.
the end, and we want to see what we're looking for here going forward. Grump, I know it's tough to captivate the attention, man, but come on.
I already mentioned it earlier on the podcast, what I want to see and what I think we're going to see. I think we'll see him play the younger guys for the first couple of games, 1, maybe 2. And if we don't get wins or produce, he'll go right back to the tried and true veteran method. That's what I think he'll do. And that's the worst thing we can do, but that's what I think he will do.
I mean, with your season on the line, you could argue it's reasonable, the same way you juggle lines. You have to, when every win's paramount, if something's not working, you just have to. And then if once you're out of it, then you just play the kids the whole time. But
my whole thing is, if he goes and let's say the veterans don't produce, will he put the younger guys back in? He's never ever shown a propensity to do something like that. That's just not who he is.
I agree with you there. I agree with you there. He has to make some updates because, the argument could have been made that Wahlstrom would have been very helpful in the Tampa series.
Absolutely. And now let me ask you this too, guys. Grump, I want to ask you how you think the season is going to unfold, and same here with you, Andy. What do we think we're going to see here? Because we've got a stretch of games, 11, I think in the next, it's like a game almost every other day. Then we have that break that was designed there for the Olympics. We're going to have games filled in. We're almost looking at a game every other day from here until the end of the season. So we're going to have a lot of games in a tight, compact schedule. I want to kind of get a little bit of both what you see, pull out your crystal balls and tell us what you see here going forward.
For me, I think we can get to 9th place. And I just think we're better than the other teams. I think everybody in front of us is better than us. And so far ahead, no shot of making the playoffs. 0. I don't care if we go 10 for 10 in the next 10 games. We're still not making the playoffs because every team who's in the playoff spot right now are better than us. It's just that, for me, it's just that plain and simple. We're like, what are we, 14 points out of playoffs now? I mean, and 5 teams, but I think we're good enough to get to 9th place in the Eastern Conference. I really do.
Well, my gut tells me that when other teams are going to have prolonged breaks, when you got a team like the Rangers is playing well, and then all of a sudden they're going to have this random February stretch. Other teams are going to be disrupted. And then all of a sudden the Islanders are going to be playing every other day. I believe that's going to build positive momentum for them. As long as they're playing well, I believe they will go on a stretch and pull themselves. It's tough to say, but at this point last year, Pittsburgh was just dismissed as, there's no way they're making the playoffs. Like, that's what it was looked at. We were looking at Philadelphia at this point of the season, whatever percentage of the way we were through. It was looked at Pittsburgh, they're done. They're on the way out. Sellers break up the band. They ended up winning the division. So you forget how long the season goes, and every other team is going to be disrupted by that Olympic break because they've played the games. We haven't. So we're going to be playing straight through this thing. So when other people are going to have to dust off those elbows, we're going to be fully rested and because we've been resting this whole time. We will be rolling, and that will be our opportunity to stack up wins. Whether it happens, I don't know. The team, like I said, these are defensemen I don't trust defensively, and we will see. Time will tell. But like I said, if we're keeping our opponents under 30 shots, which has always been the magic number, we'll be winning. If we don't, we will probably be losing. So that's what I think.
So where are you predicting us to finish? It's okay to say ninth. It's all right.
I mean, that's what, because some of the teams in there are going to have an awful stretch. Just every team goes through awful stretches, even good teams, like great teams even. You know what? I'm going 8th.
No. Okay.
Okay. Why, man? Think about it, right? What team are we thinking is going to fall off? I mean, maybe
any team. The Rangers can lose 9 out of 10 tomorrow. They have 4 or 5 good players. And the best goalie other than Vasilevsky. But
I was about to say Shesterkin. I think this. I mean, like they talk about, maybe their defense has improved a bit. Shesterkin's been out of this world great.
He's nasty. He's going to be the best.
They're 24 points ahead of us. We're not catching them.
I'm just giving you an example. These are scam teams. I told you it's a scam division. The guy likes the scam of the week on my show. Well, the scam of the year is the Metropolitan division.
You want to know the scam of the year? Is people thinking the New York Islanders had a shot to make the playoffs this year.
Come on. I'm not saying prior results automatically guarantee future results, but I will say this much. I really thought that somebody in this division was going to take a step backwards. We talk about how the age affects us. It seems like Pittsburgh and Malkin and Crosby have ageless wonders. And when you talk about Washington, it seems like Ovechkin's an ageless wonder. It seems like the teams that I would expect to maybe start, Crosby maybe start taking a few steps back, and same with Ovechkin. Those guys are still playing at an unbelievable level.
Yeah, but then Grumpy's saying blow up our whole team as he sees every team in our division with older players outperforming us. So they should all blow theirs up too. Everybody with people over 30, just blow up everything, blow up the league, blow up my house, blow up everything. How are they doing it? Their cores are all mid-30s
because their core is Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, Evgeny Malkin, and then you look at Washington's right there goes, because they're all better than our guys over 30. Every single one of them. And good guys, really good players, can play longer. Look at Boston, right? Bergeron, Marchand.
It's just so funny how you're just fully arguing against yourself right now. Like literally, you're arguing against a previous version of yourself from 20 minutes ago.
You have to produce. If you're over 30 and you're not producing, goodbye.
Well, you didn't say that before. Before, if it was you're over 30, get rid of you. Now, if you're over 30 and you don't produce, get rid of you, which is what I said. 30, take it by player basis.
What I said is, if we are over 30 and you were looking for a long-term deal, no way. That's what I said. No way am I signing. Certainly nobody on this team who's over 30.
I think there's only certain exceptions to players over 30 that really work well. And again, they have to be
stars.
Like generational S-type talents or elite level players. Those are the ones that I feel like can play into their mid and late 30s. I mean, like, the lowest strata I'd use is Joe Thornton, right? Joe Thornton at his time was a fantastic player. And, towards the end,
he was an MVP caliber every year, 100-point guy.
Oh, as was said, fantastic player.
Yeah.
I'm not putting Joe Thornton on the Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin type level. I think that those players that are elite, unbelievable players, like Matt Barzal is a player that I could feel like could play in his mid or late.
He really was though, because they weren't in the league yet. And the early 2000s, Joe Thornton was the number 1 point. Like there was no other he was the franchise player. It was like him, LeCavalier, like. You go through stretches in the league where there is no Lemieux and there is no, Crosby. And he was like, dude, he was putting up 100 points every year in the death NHL. He was superstar, Joe Thornton.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about, we don't have anyone on this team like that. No one. Not
but also our guys are in mid 30. Like get rid of Brock Nelson. Stupid. It's just stupid.
If somebody offered you 2 first-round picks for Brock Nelson, would you take it?
Of course I would, but I mean, no, they're not doing that.
That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't do that for Brock Nelson. Here's the reason:
2 first-round picks.
That's why you're crazy.
Two first-round picks that are going to be late in the 20s. Like when I look at guys I can get rid of that are expendable. First off, Scott Mayfield's one of those guys. I know we disagree on that. I really do think Robin Sal can step in and play the bottom pairing defense role.
Yeah, he's a left-handed defenseman, and Mayfield's a right though.
Okay. Let me go ahead and pull it. But when I look at those items, Brock Nelson's the guy who finally added a second line center, which his team is so desperately needed for such a long time. Who else would fill in that spot? I mean, we have him on, in my opinion, we have him on a very, very nice contract, a team friendly contract. I would argue was $6 million a year for the next 3 years or 4 years.
I love him, by the way. I'm just saying that's a king's ransom.
There's the only guy who I wouldn't. There's like 5 untouchables on this team. They're all under the age of 30.
Well, there were 6, but we let him get touched.
Well, he's long gone. So I don't count him on my calculations anymore, right? But anybody else that they want, if you offer me the right price, I'm willing to move them.
No, every GM thinks that way, by the way. Nobody's untouchable for the right price.
Well, there's certain guy, like I'm not moving Barzell.
Yeah,
I'm not moving him.
Yes.
I'm not moving.
What if somebody gave you 15 first-round picks?
I think you're only allowed to trade 3.
I'm just saying, but that's what that saying's supposed to mean.
It was 15 first-round picks. I love you, Matty B, but you're gone.
That's what that saying's supposed to mean. Every single person is expendable for the right price.
I would say if Matt Barzell is not willing to sign an extension this offseason, a long-term extension, and then I'd look to move him because he's 1 year from unrestricted free agency. 1 year. And if he says, no, I'm just going to sign 1 year and play, move him. That's when you move him. You don't want to get caught with the Tavares thing again. Can't let that happen.
Was that because as you flashed those, I was reading some of those usage and
I apologize. Usually I do a good job of getting up all the comments, but I've not done a good job.
No, it's even if you rapid fire them, I got quick eyes. There was one that kind of caught my attention, but I didn't.
Something about Mayfield.
About Mayfield.
I just saw that one. Mayfield. I guess but that's fine with TJ. Like if TJ thinks. I get it, when you see someone like that struggle for the season, but like I have the opposite problem with you guys. I don't take much stock in what I see during the season because I know veterans, they mail in a lot of performances because they know what they need to like store up in the bank for the postseason. You see this, it's one of the best things about the Lightning nobody talks about. They find a way to win without really putting their best efforts out there. And it's why they have the juice necessary in the playoffs. And I believe that's what you get with veteran teams a lot. That's why towards the end of the year, they're really good in a lot of those games. And in the beginning of an 82-game season, you see their worst play. Coincidentally, we've seen their worst play. Somebody like Mayfield, you really will miss him come playoff time. Those cross checks to the back of those players on the Stars, man, people hate playing against him. He is such a good guy to have on your team come playoff time. So if you are someone with playoff aspirations, that's a tough hit to take, not on the stat sheet, but in real life, but in my opinion.
For me, if we're not a competitor, and I don't think we are, and someone you can for a guy who's got 1 year left at $1.45 million per, I could see you definitely getting a first round plus for him. I'm willing to do that only because we're not contenders. And I just don't see with this current group us being contenders going forward. I'd say we just load up our draft picks, and let's just start over. That's me.
And by the way, there's a whole slew of teams who stock up those draft picks, draft people, and nothing happens. So you have to worry like that. That is not some magic way to success. The majority of draft picks bust.
You got to get Stevie Y. You got to bring Stevie Y in to go ahead and erect you a great team. And then when you need to be put over the top, that's when you got to jettison them out.
But see, that's where I trust Lamoriello. I trust him. Now, is Barry Trotz the right coach? That I really don't know. But I do trust Lamoriello. And I think if, let's say Barry Trotz says, no, I'm just going to play the old guys. That's just the way it's going to be. I'll see you later. I bring somebody else in, different mindset, because I think Lou drafts players based on what his coach wants to have on the team. I really believe that. I mean, I think he works with his coach. And if they decide to go in a different direction, I mean, Toronto's totally different team than the Islanders, right? So, I'm more of, let's load up on talent and let it play out from there. I think Lamoriello is a spectacular GM. I really do. And if I can get a couple of first-round picks for Scott Mayfield and, one for, whoever, I'm willing to load up. I really am, because this group of players is not going to win a Stanley Cup. And that's all I care about is winning Stanley Cups. That's it.
Cup or bust, huh, Grump?
Pretty much. But I've
I
always
mentioned
been
that
like
last episode we talked about this, and we will have cap space. Somebody had just mentioned in one of those comments we have like 25 million. I agree with that, and we talked about that last time. I just didn't want to kind of re-bring it up. Is we talked about all those floaters who are coming off, those Hickeys and those Clutterbucks. Like it actually adds up. It's 2 here, 3 there, 4 there. Then Varlam, he's the best guy to trade if you can at any point. It's somebody who really needs it. Who is that? Who is calling out their goalie? Was that Edmonton?
Edmonton, yeah.
now,
Kyle.
Edmonton's got Ken Holland as GM, and he came out just today and said, we're not trading their first round pick. They don't have a second.
You better not ask for a first round pick for a goalie.
But what I'm saying is that's what people are saying. Oh, definitely you get a first round pick plus for Varlamov. I'm just saying people are saying that. Not me. People are saying that. But here's the thing. Edmonton doesn't have a second, third, or a fourth round pick this year. So I can see.
Well, so what are they? They're not planning on adding anybody at the trade deadline. They're not planning on giving a first round pick.
They said unless he's like in a playoff spot where like they're like 25th, 26th team in the league. If they don't think that they have a legitimate chance to win a cup, he said they're not moving. They're not going to make a move like that. I mean, those are the things you have to do.
There are other teams. I mean, just take if anyone gives you a second, take it. Like he's a goalie who we're probably not going to rely on this year and shouldn't have to rely on next year. If you get something from him, just
see, that's my mindset as well. That's my mindset.
He's the backup now, and he makes $5 million a year. If you could go ahead and trade him off to a team that he's going to be the starter, and I think it works out well for both teams. Our system is fantastic. We can find a less expensive backup goaltending option.
Don't forget, we brought him in because Grumpy forgets the time that the Isles were a disgrace organization to come to, which was 2 days ago, and we literally had to sign him because Sorokin's like, I'm not coming there, and we literally had to show them like, look, we'll bring your friend and you'll be able to be with your fellow Russian and life will be good. And that was part of why they didn't sign Leonard and brought him in to literally lure Sorokin in. That's how awful coming to the Isles used to be perceived. But don't worry, let's scrap it and try to start from scratch.
That's why I trust Lamoriello. Okay, but you realize we still haven't signed an outside free agent since Andrew Ladd. Right?
You also used to say, though, that Lamoriello bringing in Varlamov to bring in Sorokin was one of the biggest wins he's ever had.
That's right.
Manager.
That's why I trust him. Now, here I have a question for you, Andy. I'm of the firm belief, if you're a player with any offensive ability, why would you want to come play for Barry Trotz?
At Thanksgiving, my cousin, who's a Ranger fan, just going nuts the opposite way, just saying nobody's going to re-sign with the Islanders because it's killing their stats. He's convinced Barzal's gone, but once again, when people have their fandom involved, I can't even trust that he means it. He just wants them to lose. But from your perspective, it's always going to be the guys that you hate. Somebody who's they've gotten their stats already. They've proven who they are, and they want to win. And someone like that is most likely, their age is most likely going to start with that 3.
Well, see, then you're just asking for just shampoo Lou, wash, rinse.
You should never give free agents anyway. Like I think every Tavares signing, eventually in the end ends up being awful. The majority of them, if you look at long-term contracts, every single team ends up wanting to get out of it.
And that's why you build through the draft.
You already said that, by the way, with Bailey. Not Bailey, Anders Lee. TJ, you were like, you know what? The end of that one's going to suck. That's always the case when you sign a guy who's like 27, 28. When they enter unrestricted free agency, you got to give them that 7-8 year deal, whatever the hell it is. And Toronto's going to be sad about Tavares, and we're going to be every long-term contract sucks at the end.
We as soon as Tavares signed, we were in big belief of it's actually good for us. I mean, we lost an elite talent, a fantastic talent. Towards the tail end, a guy who doesn't skate well is going to age even quicker than good skaters. And I was always a little pissed off just because Grumpy's going to say I'm like a spurn lover, but I was always pissed off because he knew he was going the entire time. The wife took the job in Toronto, and we were unable to trade him at the trade deadline for draft capital. That's the thing that always pissed me off about Tavares. I mean, it's worked out better for all parties, I think. I mean, we've been an ultra successful team. I'm not going to say that we would not be as good, if not better, with an elite talent like Tavares, because I think that would be foolish. But
yeah, but
I never was too angry at him. He played for the Islanders. It's we got 4 buildings. We're taking Long Island railroads. Nobody, they're the least popular team of all the New York sports teams. I never really blame the guy. He grew up in Toronto where they worship hockey. and we never presented him the organization until the very last year on his way out, when he was already had years of misery.
For me, I never blame any free agent for going and getting the money. Not at all. And here's the thing. If you're 20, like I said, if you're hitting 30, did we really need to offer Anders Lee $7 million for 7 years? Did we have to? I mean, why?
It was the panic contract when Panarin pulled the last second U-turn.
But you know what? See, what I would, okay, if you can sign, this is our offer. This is what we budget you for. If you can get more, see you later. I don't care that you were the captain for a year. I have no problem with that. I believe in the Bill Belichick method when it comes to stuff like that. I really do.
There's only one Bill, though. Every other team who tries that fails miserably.
Well, yeah, helped.
He's the one
12.
guy.
Well, he had number 12 too, so that kind of helped as well. But like I said, Branch Rickey was the first guy who said, I'd rather trade a guy a year too early than a year too late. And he's 100% right.
I agree with that.
I mean, for me, we have too many of those guys on this team. I mean, that's just my opinion. We just have way too many guys like that on this team. And we keep on making the same mistake year after year after year. Same mistake.
Let me bring up this question. This is, I think, an ideal scenario for all of us. What do you think it realistically would take to trade away Josh Bailey, right? I think we all agree we're going to have to give something up to get rid of Bailey. What do you think it would actually cost to get rid of him? He's only got 1 year left on his contract after this. So what do you realistically think it would take to get rid of Josh Bailey?
For me, if you were to trade him, his $5 million is a problem. But to the right team, I think you could get a 4th round pick for him. If you trade him to the right team.
Yeah, yes. I'm with Grumpy on that. Yes. I'm with Grumpy on that. Like, people will they will think that the Islanders' down year is reason for the lack of production, and they'll look at his playoff production. A playoff-bound team with very little experience will bring on a guy like that because they'll probably have salary cap because they're a younger team, a team without experience, and whatever. Yeah, give up a 4th or 5th. I'm actually with Grumpy. I told you if you said things that aligned with mine, I wouldn't just begrudgingly hold them back.
Well, only because I bitched you out before.
Stop.
So, no, but seriously, all right, think about it. A team like Colorado, who could use him in the 3rd line role. I don't know if they have the money.
They don't have the cap.
Okay, well, like I said, I don't know the cap numbers, but a team who needs a 3rd line player, because he's not a top 6 player anymore, but he's a glue guy, right?
Wow.
He can play minutes, play up and down the wing. But you know what? They're not going to break the bank for him.
A guy like Bailey.
DJ. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just about to say a guy like Bailey fits in like a guy like Nicoletti does in Detroit. He's got 1 year left on his contract. He will help provide some veteran leadership for a young team that has prospects that are entering into form and can help teach them what it's like to be professional and how to win. He's still a competent player playing in a limited role. And if you play him on a 3rd line, he's a fantastic locker room guy. I just don't think we're going to get a lot in return for Josh Bailey, if anything.
I don't think a 4th round pick is a lot for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's in line with you've seen pretty bad veterans go at the trade deadline, like just because teams are in need of something. You also factor in that little, injuries may happen along the way, and a team is void of whatever, a certain player, and they feel like they could just put him in there. And I'm not texting on you. I just wanted to see those miserable, some of those Western Conference standings. And I just want to see some of those young teams because the perfect team for him would be the Rangers, right? Inexperienced, but we haven't done a deal with them, I believe, since Jeff Toms for Eric Cairns, the 2 fighters.
You're going way back.
I wonder if that's still the last one.
I think it, and just to speak on the Western Conference, I know we talked about Edmonton. I mean, Dave Tippett's got to be on the way out if he doesn't turn things around. I mean, that Edmonton team is just desperately searching for answers. They continue to get more questions. Defense isn't there, and goaltending still isn't there. I would still be shocked if they don't give up their 1st round pick in some capacity this year at the trade deadline. If they don't, I mean, Tippett and general manager have to go. No.
For me, Ken Holland's a new GM there, right? How many years was he in Detroit? Built, fantastic teams for years and years and years. I don't think Dave Tippett's the answer, but you have to look for an upgrade then. Todd McClellan. I thought Todd McClellan was a good fit there. Sorelli was the GM. You have to have a nice marriage between the two. I mean, I think that team needs a little bit more discipline, maybe more than Tippett's able to provide. Actually, you know who would have been a really good coaching option for them? Daryl Sutter, who's done a fantastic job in Calgary. Tell me he wouldn't be fantastic in Edmonton.
Those Canadian teams, Josh Bailey, those young teams who are kind of or also what about the Ducks? The Ducks are I think they're in second place. I just saw, and they, other than Getzlaff, they probably wouldn't mind another veteran. Look, there are teams that will need somebody at the time. Once, like, especially when you approach that trade deadline, people start going off the board. You can probably swipe. Remember, we're happy to get in. We're just happy that he's not occupying ice time.
What does it do? What does it also do? It frees up a spot in the lineup for a younger player because everyone's under long-term deals. There's nowhere for young guys to fit in. And that's the biggest problem I have. It's like everybody is chiseling granite the starting lineup, the starting players. Palmieri's here for another 3 years. Nelson's here for another 3 or 4 years. Lee is here for another 5 years. Everyone's on long-term deals. It's like you have to move some of those guys out to move some of the newer guys up. It has to happen.
Yeah, but like there are smart ways to do it. Like Bailey, he's obviously bad. Move him off. Give a guy his slot. Problem solved for one player. Like I was just saying, you just take it on a player by player basis. And obviously, I wish we didn't sign Palmieri looking back, but what are you going to do?
You could have traded for Tarasenko instead.
Oh, I know, dude. I was right with you on that whole podcast. These idiots say the guy's playing for a contract. We know he's 100-point capable.
The whole
Obviously,
thing,
there has to be more to it.
We didn't need to re-sign Palmieri. It was not necessary.
I agree.
We could have made the trade for Tarasenko. Then he's your first line sniper, who I think would be great with Barzal.
Yeah. I think both of you guys, I think fans in general, there's something about the unknown of like the future. You guys just think young guys are going to be good. Do you know how many guys are bums? The Rangers haven't drafted a talented forward since Alexei Kovalev in 1994. They've had to go pay him every single time. A generational forward, and he didn't even end up scoring a lot until he went to Pittsburgh. It's hard to find good players. And the fact that you just think you're going to throw these guys in there, it just like you guys, we're so lucky that Wahlstrom, it looks like he's panning out. So many times, every other Wahlstrom just on other teams. Something about the Islanders forwards, they seem to pan out more than other teams. And like you got to be careful when it's just like, oh, give a slot to a younger guy, because many times they just don't pan out. There's a lot of Michael Dal Coles of this world. That's usually what happens.
And see, that's my theory on the season. It's like, let's play the young guys, see who can be part of the solution. And if you're not, then we know what we need to look for going forward. I mean, the older guys are just flat out not producing. They're just not.
We talk a lot about we talk about the Rangers right there missing on a lot of those young forwards. They're still very young. I'm not willing to count them out yet, but nowhere near, or Capo Caco is nowhere near what he was originally anticipated to be, and neither is like Lafreniere. Hasn't really shown, hey, I was worth the first overall selection. Look at Kravtsov, he's overseas in the KHL. I mean, they've had a lot of issues on that side, but the talent is there on that team, and they just needed a real coach instead of College Quinn.
I was talking about from 1994 straight to now. I wasn't talking about those guys. They're so young. We're going to see what happens. Every Jamie Lundmark they've drafted, all their first-round forwards, literally zero have panned out the way they'd hoped. And that's the case so much of the time. So, like, don't just think giving Dal Cole a chance it means he was going to be a star. Way more like that than Wahlstrom, who come up and start sniping.
And of course, Miller Miller goes to Canucks and starts lighting it up too. I mean, like, that's one they miss. Or that's one.
Sometimes the player's not a fit for the system. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's another thing, right? You look at Kako. You mentioned Kako. He's 20 years old.
No, I know, but that's not who I'm talking about when it comes to that stuff.
He's talking about
TJ. I mean, Lafreniere is 19. I mean, it's way too early to write those guys off.
No, I know. And I mean, Kreider's been good. They they're a team that, has always been, I mean, they've had a very, very successful, they haven't won a cup in quite some time, but they've been very competitive over the last stretch of years. And, it's just crazy how quick, it's the same thing that happened to us, how quick a coaching change can really go ahead and fit the system and the player and the personnel base that you have. I mean, Gallant's done wonders for them. I'm not sure if they'll be able to keep it up. I think Shesterkin allows them he's kind of like the stickum and the spackle that covers up issues that they have on the defensive side of the puck. And, I think Trotz's system really put a lot of spackle on our lack of offensive ability at times. So, you look at some of those spackle pieces. I mean, Trotz is, as much as we talk about issues that he has, he's invaluable to this team.
Yeah, but I mean, for me anyway, spackle only gets you so far.
I agree with
Eventually,
that.
you're gonna need talent to win. You just are.
Sometimes it's worth saying, hey, we got to stop spackling. We need to just get a new side. We need to get a new side of the house. 3
years ago, they said we need to add more firepower, right out of Trotz and Lamoriello's mouth. And what have they done to get it? Nothing. Sometimes you just got to cut away the dead wood and just replay.
I mean, how many Stanley Cup? How can you watch all the Stanley Cups? Like, yeah, Tampa's a generational team. You watch St. Louis winning the cup. They're a bunch of nobodies, and you only say they're not because they won the cup, and then retroactively we make them household names. But going into that, it was Tarasenko, some of Ryan O'Reilly, and a couple defensemen and a new goalie, and they're winning a Stanley Cup. Ottawa got to Game 7 with the Hamburglar, where in overtime almost got to the Stanley Cup. It's not so cut and dry. You can do it with bums. You can do it. The system is just like Belichick is what survives. Trotz will always be lingering. The odds of him not getting back to there that's what the evidence suggests. Every year, he's going to be lingering around there. This is such an aberration compared, and we're 30 games in, by the way. This is the outlier. So to not allow the guy to do what he does every single year one more time, it's just,
before these last two years, in 30 years of coaching, he'd only made it past the first round of the playoffs twice.
Yeah, because he took the expansion the success he got with Vernon Fiddler should be praised to the end of time.
But then even when he went to Washington, Washington was President's Trophy.
Nashville, 14, 15 seasons. I mean, that team is straight up yours. You draft, I mean, that team, and again, you're not general manager, but that team is yours from start to finish. When you're there 14, 15 seasons since I mean, that team is his. It's like,
and they were good. David Poile they were a good team. They just
Jay Weber, Roman Yossi's. Yeah, they definitely had ability.
In the playoffs, Dan Ham used in the playoffs, they just couldn't get over the hump. The same thing with Washington. I mean, they were President's Trophy winners when he came.
But that was the same with Boudreau. Like, he's the one who got them over the hump.
He got Anaheim.
But also, I get it. Like, that is a thing where he's lost too many series. But if you remove, so let's just take from Washington on, because yes, you can say he couldn't get over the hump. But then once he got over the hump, it's been more win. Like, how many first round bounces are there? Like, yes, back in those Nashville days, but what you're seeing is the progression of a coach. And you saw a lot more winning once he came to Washington, and even with the Islanders. Like,
they were one and done every year in Washington till that last year. They were one and done.
No, that wasn't true. That's not
true. They
true.
Lost to Pittsburgh in the second round every year.
Year. Because of the scam tactics. They both were for the President's Trophy.
Okay.
So would it make you feel better if he won a second round against some other team?
Facts are he didn't. That's the whole thing. He didn't.
He didn't until he did, and then he left the team and then took another team. He got wins every single year.
And they got swept by Carolina, just to let you know. I want to make sure
I understand.
You remember.
After being dead last in the league in defense, they swept the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that eliminated us from the playoffs in 6 a couple of years before that.
But we were like, 5th in the league in scoring, and we dropped to 23rd?
Yeah, I know, but I feel like you're one of these guys. Like, we had Barzal outscore Tavares. We had Tavares, Barzal. We had all these guys putting up all these points. But you'd rather see a bunch of goals and high-five your friends than have a team that wins in a fashion that isn't as exhilarating for your eyes and puts up fewer points to make you think these guys are old and not producing, but they're really just on a team that plays within a structure, which is why you send Eberle to be a big loser in Seattle and watch him put up 15 goals or whatever he has already.
I'm glad you brought that back up because you made that point earlier and I forgot to hit on this. I'm not saying we need to completely abandon fan of the system. I'm just saying that we can't have complete stark opposites. The league goes towards more of a high octane, fast pace, offensive minded system, heavy forward check. Defensemen have to be offensive oriented. I'm not saying we have to fully convert to that. It'd be nice to have some median. I think it would benefit the team too. I looked at the last 3 seasons. We're bottom 10 in scoring every single year, and it works all right when you're top 5 in goals against average. I'm not saying that we've got to be top 5 in goals against average. I don't mind if we say, hey, Ilya Sorokin, we believe you have talent back there in net. We're actually going to say you're going to face more high danger scoring opportunities because we believe you in net. We're going to go ahead and force a little bit more on the offensive side of the puck to generate more goals. I'm just saying, in order to be successful, our special teams in the past have not been fantastic. We've seen a little bit of life in there lately. We've got to have the power play that produces more than it has in the past 3 seasons.
Absolutely.
And forward,
Absolutely.
and we're talking goal production. We need to mortgage off a little bit of the defensive steadfastness and say, hey, I don't mind if we give up a goal or 2 more. Maybe if we give up, let's say, 20 or 30 goals more this season, we need to generate 30 or 40 more goals scored. That's going to obviously end up in a net plus for us.
So, for example, that one thing you said, it solves the whole problem. The Islanders power play has made me sick for years. We haven't had a lefty who can shoot in a long time. We had one with Toews, who, by the way, once again, is leading the league in power play goals per game for defenseman. But remember, he can't do that. He can't do that. So we should get rid of him. But if you have a power play, remember how everyone feared Tampa's power play? Now imagine Tampa just played a defense first approach. Even they do that a lot where they just go, we don't want to score. We saw it in game 2. We saw that like when they against Carolina, all these 2-1s, they just say, we're not sending people. We're going to win a low scoring game. Now, let's say we had the same approach and had a nasty power play. All of a sudden, you're middle of the pack to the top third of goals scored. If you addressed that power play these past few years, you're exactly in the same category that you want to be in, while not sacrificing even 1 goal defensively. It fixes all those things that you worry about. But we have such a dog shit power play, which is why I also, the Bailey thing running the second unit, that it impacts the overall kind of outlook for the offense, where people just look at the total goals scored, bottom 10. Well, you have a decent power play. All of a sudden, you're number 12 instead of like 20.
The reason we don't have a decent power play, though, too, I originally made the foolish mistake, and Grumpy will tell you when it first happened, I said, oh, Gomez is the reason for the issue, right? We just don't have quick enough puck movement. I was listing off the litany of issues we have, and then we replaced Gomez, and we're like, okay, now we got the replacement. He's got one of the most powerful, most high-octane power plays in Toronto before he leaves, and we still have the same issues. I say when you try to take the focus of we need to have 4 lines that score, it compromises your power play because you won't have enough of the high-end elite offensive scores to consistently put up those points. The power play always goes through ebbs and flows. But do you seriously see this power play as a unit that could score 18 to 20% of the time they're out there on the ice? I mean, they're never going to be Edmonton scoring 30-some-odd%. But do you even think they could be middle of the pack, upper middle of the pack on this power play with the way the team is constituted?
With the new grouping, I think we could be middle of the pack. But, Andy, you brought in the point about Tampa. You want to know why Tampa's able to do that? Because their talent level is just so superior that they can do that.
4 or 5 Hall of Famers.
But, that's the whole thing. It's like their talent is so superior that, they can play any style. They remind me of the Islanders from the 80s because they can just play any type of style game you want, and they can come out and win. Like I said, they lost their whole third line this year. So what do? They signed 3 guys who make combined between a bunch of them $4.5 million, and it's like they don't even miss the other guys.
We're gonna see if it comes back to get them, because yes, this is the regular season right now, but let's see when teams are rolling 4 against them in meaningful games if there's a
knowing how to win and being in that system a long time, it helps. It helps once you know how to win.
I feel like too, what they always do is because they've done a fantastic job drafting. That's why they're in a position they're in, right? Victor Hedman's going to be a first ballot Hall of Fame type of guy. You're probably looking at the same with Stamkos. You're looking at the same with Vasilevsky. You may be looking at the same there with Kucherov, Braden Point's another outstanding talent. The more cups you win, I think it makes a larger case that all 5 of them are going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But I think it's easier to add at the trade deadline a sandpaper grit type of guy, albeit you always have to overpay for those guys at the deadline. But I think it's easier to add a sandpaper gritty type of player, which is what they always need come in the playoffs, as opposed to trying to add, a sniper or a guy who's one of those, highly offensive talented players.
But look at Corey Perry. 1 year, $1 million, and he's got 10 goals for them this year. I mean, I don't know.
Zach Parise produced that well this year for us too.
He'll be lucky to have 10 goals the rest of his career, honestly. I don't see it happening. I mean, I overshot when I said 10 goals this year. I overshot that by a mile.
Power play is something. So how Grumpy feels about like the offense in general, where you just want to stack stars. I believe that's more so the case with the power play. Like he said, it is very star laden because it requires the next level of skill where you have to thread these micro needle passes through the, smallest of seams, which is why you see really the only person who is kind of figuring that out is Barzal. But it doesn't necessarily mean who's the best players overall, because there have been power play specialists through the years. Like, there's a guy like Marcus Johansson, unbelievable at threading passes on the power play, but he's not so great at this point of his career. But for some reason, he sees the ice beautifully. It's really a collection of, do you have the right guys who work in unison, and a mix of like skill, passing ability, and shooting ability. And the Islanders do not have the full complement what's necessary to have a top 10 power play. But I also agree, top 15 is definitely within reach.
But only with the recent mix I've seen with Bellows, and Wallstrom,
and with Bailey,
Dobson, and Lee in front of the net.
Yes.
You got guys who are not afraid to shoot the puck. So many guys on our power play have just been afraid to shoot
Dude,
the puck.
it's not fear. Nick Leddy had a bad shot, and Josh Bailey has a bad shot. They know in practice when they try shooting from there, it's an easy glove by the goalie, and then that's it. It's a whistle. They know they can't score because they don't have bullets. Go look at Nylander and Matthews run the top of their power play. It's frightening because they can rip a missile, or they can put it perfectly through the seams for someone else to blast a one-timer. You have multiple, even Barzal, he's got a decent shot. We have nobody of this echelon in terms of like shooting ability and passing ability all at once. That's why we struggle. Like the personnel simply does not allow for it, unfortunately.
Well, Pulak, remember when they tried Pulak over there? He had a great shot and he could pass, but I mean, it's like they're just the wrong guys. You need a guy with the quick release, and both Bellows and Wallstrom have it. They both have it. Those are the type of guys you need to have on your power play. I mean, you can't have your Baileys, you can't have your Leddy. And Noah Dobson, very underrated, his ability to put the puck on net with the wrist shot. Very underrated.
No. Like I told you before, only criticizing his defensive play. I said it was worth it, though, because of the strides he's made on the power play and on the offensive side. And he has been good getting that puck to the net, which has, led to increased production for him. And definitely.
Now, I've come out with a radical thought process, and this I'm sure that you will not agree with, Andy. And now, Grumpy, I don't know. I've never really asked you on whether you agree with it or not. You just kind of respond back to how ludicrous it would be for us. But I seriously believe Noah Dobson, and I said this before he went on his stretch where he was scoring goals and putting up points ad nauseum. I said at the end of this, if you extend him to an 8-year contract, I would have no problem at all with them paying him $6.5–7 million a year if they extend him to an 8-year contract. I really believe that he's shown all the tailor-made signs that he could be a top-line defenseman. He still has items he needs to work on, but I watch how smooth of a skater he is and the offensive ability he has. This is another guy, if he was playing for another team, would be putting up close to a point a game basis. And I would have no problem at all if you preemptively say, we're going to lock you in because we believe you're a cornerstone of this team. You're a true top 2 guy. We're going to lock you in for an 8-year deal.
I'm all for that. And I don't think you'd have to offer him $7 million a per either, maybe 6, because you're buying out restricted free agency years. So you pay less up front. And this way you have less going against your cap when he's supposed to be an unrestricted free agent. That's your trade-off because they don't have to pay him that much for the next 5 years.
I'm just
or
saying,
whatever it is.
I would go up to 7. If you said, "Hey, 7's my price," I would still say, "Yeah, I'd do an 8 years, $7 million per."
Well, I'd go 6 and see what he says. There's nothing wrong with that. If you consider him a cornerstone, absolutely, and I think he is. By the way,
Yeah, if you were to sign him to that now, he has no legs to stand on to ask for that money. He's shown nothing other than a small stretch now. I mean, he would sign that in a heartbeat. Because he's still having to prove himself, you know?
His contract expires technically at the end of this stretch. And if they were to do something short term with him, what I don't want to see happen is us be in a similar situation where we extend him to a 3-4 year deal, and then you're going to be having to pay him an outstanding amount. Like you're going to have to pay him $9.5, $10 million, $11 million.
If he turns into the guy you're thinking, it's that calculated, it's the gamble, you know?
Do you think, I mean, what shows you that he wouldn't be able to take the next step?
Because, I mean, I hate when people use these kind of arguments, but like, one of those like, trust me, mans, you see what you need to see in the first few years. Nobody finds the defense to the degree he needs to find defense to be enough to the point where it's not a liability.
Well, Cale Makar,
he, to me, has been a liability since day one defensively. He still is. Like you said, these are coachable mistakes, but at what point, like, it's just an extra level of sick that adds to my Toews thing. Stepped out there right away, never looked out of place ever. There are defensemen who step out there pretty quickly and look the part. And the fact that you see so many of those, not even to Toews' extent, just to a regular extent, when you see somebody struggle to that regard, like to that extent, it's very unlikely that they're going to clog that all up while flourishing. And some of his offensive abilities, I think you're overestimating them. He's not as fast as a top level skater. Like I saw him try to break away from someone in one of these overtimes. He's above average, but he can't fly. He can't just start passing people. I saw him try to separate from people in overtimes, and they were keeping with him. He's not that next level. So if he's not going to be a next level player on offense, and in my opinion, he's going to continue to struggle on defense, he's not for me long term in terms of like a long deal. I've never been a fan of defensemen like skinny little guys who get bodied in the playoffs, lose the puck on the boards, turn it over. It's a catastrophe in 2-1 games, an absolute catastrophe.
I think he's a boy. For 6'4", the kid flies. In my opinion, he's a boy still.
3 strides, and he's across center ice.
I think he's still got a lot of weight and maturing to do. What is he? Still only 20? He's going to be 21 years old.
He's 22. We just turned 22.
I'm sorry, he just
turned
22.
For what it's worth, defensemen come along slower.
And especially big defensemen too, I feel like take a while longer to go ahead and get up to speed. I just think what I've seen out of him, I give him a lot of mad props there on the offensive side of the puck. You talk about, from the power play position there as being the quarterback. He might not have a fantastic shot, but the guy does something that our team has missed since John Tavares has left. That is one of Anders Lee's strong points. We very rarely see guys throw the puck towards the net or throw the puck slightly off center towards the net and say, "Here you go, Anders Lee. Here you go. I want you to go ahead and deflect this and put this on net." It's something that Matt Barzal has never really excelled at, and it's the reason why I think you saw the significant goal deduction since Tavares left and he was no longer with Anders Lee. Matt Barzal doesn't throw to a point to where Anders Lee is and say, "Here, go deflect this." Matt Barzal says, "My skates and my ability to evade defenders is fantastic. I'm going to make this happen on my own." And and in that aspect, right, you could say he gets a little greedy on that side, but I think Dobson does a good job utilizing, hey, throw the puck towards the net. Crazy bounces are going to happen and I'll be able to benefit from it. The defensemen who put up points always get paid, right, wrong, or indifferent. They can be hideous on defense. Erik Karlsson is not a good defender who puts points up on the net, puts points on the stat sheet. Not saying that he'll be Erik Karlsson-esque. I'm just saying the guys who put points on the stat sheet will get paid.
Yeah, I'm aware who Shane Gostisbehere is, and I'm also aware what happened to him.
I mean, Cale Makar.
I just hate defensemen like this, man. I just do. I'm sorry. Like, I just love what Tampa's doing. They put 4-6 bricks out there. None of them are mobile. Maybe Hedman. That's it. And come playoffs,
Sergachev,
you want to? Oh yeah, he kind of is. And interestingly enough, he's their clear liability on defense. Clear.
Yep.
And yet, like, I don't think about the regular season. It's the same thing about Mayfield and Like, I'm thinking about how to win in the playoffs, and Tampa's got it down, ladies and gentlemen. They will play 2-1 games, then they'll run and gun when it's necessary, and they know you want to limit somebody who can lose you the game, which is why you had to bench Dobson in the last 10 minutes and close 2-1 games. It's crucial not to make mistakes. They have 6 huge guys. It's hard to get room, and it's hard to get in there with their big goalie too. And that's my style. That's my style. I want the Mayfields, the Puloks, the Pelliks, the Toews. Give me 6'5", 6'4". Give me the reach, and then in the playoffs, allow me to get away with a little more, and you're screwed defensively.
Yeah, for me, Dobson is still extremely young. People forget, just because he's been there 3 years, playing sheltered minutes the first 2, he hasn't been allowed to show. Now he's been allowed to show his talent. I think you're underrating him defensively. I really do. He's solid on the puck. He used to get beaten physically every single puck in a corner, but not this year because he's put on a little bit of man weight now.
He's made mistakes by throwing the puck along the boards, maybe when he should have ate it. But I've seen the progression where now he'll eat it towards the end of the game. Right? Everybody says, okay, the one where he threw it along the boards, which led to I can't remember who they were playing. He threw it up against the boards.
Nashville. Nashville. Yeah.
And they wound up scoring. Right, that loss is completely on him. Right, it's all about learning from those moments. And again, him eating.
Chara could have moved his ass behind the net instead of just standing in front of the net.
No, that's
I'm sick. He's like, I am sick and tired of seeing Dobson take blame because Chara can't move on the other side. He's having.
Look, they're going to target Dobson come playoff time. Mark my word. Like, it's just, yes, he may become a little better with his stick. He's not going to have the stat. He's not going to be big. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a skinny guy. I don't know how to say it other than, like, you're going to be able to body him come playoffs. And like when there's that loose rebound in front of the net where you always rely on the Mayfields of the world, the Pelliks, the Puloks, to clear people out of there, you know for damn certain that ain't going to be Dobson.
But see, that's not his game. That's
exactly.
Everybody's not the same, but then you need to put him with a partner who that is his game. See, that's my whole thing. You can't. I'm not saying he's Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman can do it all. How many defensemen can you say in this league can do it all? Cale Makar, for as good as he is, he's not good on the puck.
No, you're right. He's of that echelon and you saw it come out against Vegas, who got physical with him. They knew it. Like I said, I'm a Tampa guy. Give me big Cernak. I don't care give me big bodies that aren't slow as crap as long as they can kind of stay with the flow. That's what I want come playoff time.
Vegas beat Colorado because they're a one-line team. That's why they beat one. If you shut down that big line, you can beat Colorado. You really can. And I think that's really the reason why Colorado.
No, well, they had a second line, and then Kadri got suspended, and then missed the rest of that series. That's what did it.
It's like the. I think I saw a tweet about this. It's like the Olympic, the Olympic torch when they light it. Kadri getting suspended early in the playoffs in the first round is like the lighting of the Olympic torch. That's the lighting of the NHL playoffs.
I think he's leading the league in scoring right now.
But also that they had a lead with 2 minutes left in Game 3, and their goalie let up a shot from behind the net that bounced off the back of his leg. That series was literally 2 minutes from being over. But, people always forget that. I said there should be a sports show called like The Moment Nobody Remembers or Talks About, but is the reason everything happened.
The turning point.
Everything changed.
They have it in football, the turning point.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking, this is the thing that nobody talks about years later, Like Cincinnati Bengals, they haven't won a playoff game since 1992. They had one literally done. They were running out the clock. A guy fumbles on what should have been like kneeing the ball. Nobody ever talks about that. It's just a Steelers win, and that, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. But
you got the Bengals this weekend.
Bengals win this weekend.
Yeah. No, I think they should. I think they should take out. That's just a battle of loser franchises. Somebody has to lose.
Christ almighty, I tell you now, maybe the Bengals finally win. Maybe they finally get their first.
Yeah, now for the Bengals.
Burrow's got that. He's got that thing. He's got some swag. It looks like his. It's going to overcome. It's like which overcomes the other. I think he's got enough swag to get it done.
I don't think too highly of the Raiders. I mean, like I know they put it on. They kind of struggled after Gruden was gone, but
well, it helped that Brandon Staley was coaching for them Sunday night.
Yeah, that's
impressive. Out at the end was nuts.
4th and 2 from your own 18 with 11 minutes to go in the third quarter. How dumb is that? Oh, well, the numbers said if you do this, the chances are Dude, you
I mean,
just
for what
gave up
it's
3
worth,
points.
I mean, you know what's funny? Nobody talks about that it worked. They went 3 and out and kicked a field goal.
It didn't work. You gave up 3 points.
No, but the argument he would have made is, well, they're not they haven't been able to press it. The most they get out of it is a field goal. We're down 1 score.
Well, there you go.
I-
And
I-
you had lost in overtime. Okay.
the timeout. And if you listen to Carr at the end of the game, they said they were completely happy, essentially kneeling it out and just having the game over, kind of like drawing out the rest of the clock.
TJ,
They were going to run it. They were going to run the ball one more time, and if they got close enough, they were going to kick the field goal.
They were going to.
That's what was gonna
TJ,
happen.
you told me last time. You interrupted me. You said I'm a huge football guy. Don't come onto my lane. It was great. It's the first time I saw you really get fired up when I was talking.
Mhm.
Well, come on. They literally were lined up to have one more run. They know the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be facing them without the field goal. So it's one last run. There was 1 to 2 seconds left on the clock. So a timeout was taken. Then the same run occurred. If you get enough for the field goal, you kick it and don't play the Chiefs, or they stop us and that's it. It's not like it changed. The play was a run up the middle, whether it happened 1 second or after the timeout.
Here's what Staley did.
You have power to the left-hand side, but here's the thing. When you take that timeout and you have a chance to go in the huddle and you tell the offensive line, man, get this. What the hell are they doing? They're disrespecting us like this. Go and get those damn yards. I'm not saying it, if they don't call the timeout, it completely changes the outcome. They were very happy and content just running the clock out. They had no sign of urgency. They take that timeout. You go and you group up and you say, show these mother effers what the hell you're talking about. Ram this ball down their throat.
I refuse to believe that you believe that a group of NFLers who just ran it down the whole field, and the Chargers have the leakiest run defense, that you think they look at each other and go, these guys took a timeout with 1 second left. How dare they stop us from doing the play that we're still going to do right now anyway? Like, come on, that's crazy.
Here's what Staley did. Okay, he calls a timeout with 23 seconds left, and he said, well, we wanted to make sure that we were ready for run defense.
1 second left or 2 on the play clock.
That's right. It was so dumb. It was beyond dumb, right? So then what does he do? He pulls out a linebacker and puts a safety in.
Yes, that's stupid.
That's not improving your run defense. And here's the whole thing. If he doesn't get 10 yards, because it was a 49-yard kick, you think they're going to kick it from 50?
No, that's the whole thing. We run one more run. If we get enough yardage, whether before the timeout or after, you kick the field goal if we're in it and don't play the Chiefs. If they don't get it, oh, well. It all came down to that one run, before or after the timeout.
Derek Carr did say, though, he said what they call that timeout, that changed the thought process. And he said yes.
He said yes, and he didn't specify what that meant.
Well, he's not going to tell you.
Here's the thing. They were very content moving the ball downfield, just saying, hey, we're just going to run this out. We don't care. When you call the timeout, you switch the personnel. I forgot they switched the personnel as well. I don't know. I'm not saying it has a direct impact. I'm just saying if you look at how I believe firmly, coaches may not win you games. They can certainly sure as shit put you in a position to lose. True. And when you give up a field goal like that because you're going for it on 4th and 2 at your whatever 18-yard line or 30-yard line, yikes, that's a bad decision. When you call a timeout like that, that's one I'm sure he wish he would not have called.
But here's the thing. Yeah. He's an analytics guy. That's why he goes for 4th down all the time. Oh, he looks at the stats. You know what? Sometimes you got to have a feel for the game. I don't think he's got any feel.
The problem is when it works, people just go like, oh, yeah, they got the 4th down. It's like it just gets dismissed. And then when it doesn't work, then everyone just says this is the worst thing ever. But meanwhile, nobody said anything on like the previous 5 that worked.
Here's the thing. You never go for it 4th and 2 at your own 18 with 11 minutes to go in the third quarter. You just
I
don't
agree.
do it. Just
I agree. That's wacky. And I almost don't believe the analytics told him to do that. I feel like he just that's crazy. I've never seen that. We've never seen that play once. We've never seen
Lane
that.
Kiffin. Only from Lane Kiffin do you see.
Well, no, Belichick did it once against
the 4th and 26, but not on analytics. He did it because he wanted to keep Peyton Manning off the field.
It was 4th and 2. Yeah, 4th and 2
from his own like 26.
That's right. And there was so little time in the game. He's like, we can't stop him. That's why he did. This guy, like I said, I just, he's a football coach. So he played football. So, they're a little soft up top, honestly. So you kind of expect that. But it's like even the announcers were going, well, he's certainly not going for it here. They're just trying to draw him off. I'm like, oh, I can't believe he ran that play.
Yeah.
It's just foolish. I mean, you're at your own 18.
How about this, TJ? Who do you got? Who do you got coming out of the AFC and NFC? And look, the Isles fans, we 3 hours here. Okay. So let's relax. We're trying to, lighten the mood going into the weekend.
That's what our podcast tomorrow, the TJ and the Grumpy Old Man Show. We're talking about NFL preview tomorrow.
Oh, for certain, for certain. Now, Grump will disagree with me a little bit on that one. I'm not taking the line. I'm not saying the first two teams in each division are the ones making it through. I feel like the Chiefs, even though they hit a hot spot, they kind of cooled off a bit. I still think the Chiefs come out of the AFC. I think the AFC is weak. The NFC, I'll tell you, that one's more of a. I think I've got the Rams. Grumpy, he thinks every team is a flawed team. The Rams have struggled as of late too, and I mean, you talk about late half of the season. You think the Arizona Coyotes or the Arizona Cardinals might be a little bit of a paper tiger, but I still think the Rams and that defense is just fantastic, and I'll be interested to see what they can do come playoff time. I think the Packers are nowhere near as good as what their record says. I think they're a very beatable team in the NFC.
Nice.
I'm going with Tampa Bay in the NFC, and I'm going to go with Tennessee in the AFC.
Shit, man.
If they get Derrick Henry back,
they will.
If they get him back, I think
and then they're likely to get Cincinnati, an inexperienced team, at home in the second round. So really, you're talking about that game after that.
I think that Ryan Tannehill's such an inept quarterback, just a game manager, that he's one of those guys that always hinders your ability to go deep into the playoffs. They've got a fantastic running. Who knows how he's going to be after that foot surgery too? I don't know. They say, hey, he's going to be back. Is he 100%? Is he 85 because he wants to be back for the playoffs? I have no idea.
Tannehill, though, he did a hell of a job beating New England, and then
should have beat Kansas City.
And then that was Lamar's 15 in 1 year. He beat Lamar, beat New England, and then lost to Mahomes. But I mean,
and they should have beat Kansas City.
So if he's home the whole way, I mean, they might have a shot to get there. But I'm kind of with you. It's tough to predict. Here's what I'm about your Tampa and your St. Louis that I think is crucial. The play that nobody's talking about. If San Fran wins this weekend, I believe that's huge for the Rams, because I think the Rams will win, and then that will put them against the Bucs, who they match up perfectly against. They put up 30 on the Bucs last year with Goff, and then they murdered them this year. But if they lose, then they don't get that matchup, and the Rams go to Green Bay, and Green Bay, just Stafford, I don't care what you think about Green Bay. He will always see ghosts in that field. He got his ass kicked there with a pick six. Like, he cannot win there. They will beat them there. But if the Niners win and they go up to Green Bay with that crazy running game, who the hell knows? But I think in that second round, so Grumpy, you on the other side, I think you want the Cowboys to win so that you get the Cowboys and the Bucs beat the crap out of them in the second round.
I think the Cowboys don't match up.
The Cowboys have only beaten one team with the winning record all year. One team with the winning record. Here's the thing. I don't think the Rams are going to beat Arizona.
Really?
With Hopkins out, man, Murray's been so different, man. So different.
I think the Rams have just totally tailed off down the stretch. They were lucky to win a couple. They were lucky to beat Baltimore. Baltimore beat themselves.
Yeah.
Then the game before, they lost to Green Bay. I mean, honestly, I just think they're sputtering into the playoffs. Actually, this is the most wide open that it is in the NFL in forever.
It's not going to be TJ. It's not going to be easy to come out of Lambeau with a win. It's just not, like, even if maybe on the road, I'd agree with you. It's just not going to be easy to go up there and snag a win. It's just not.
I think the 49ers beat the Cowboys. I think they're going to run. They're going to drain clock. Game manager Jimmy Garoppolo is going to do his thing. That defense is stout. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Pollard and Elliott. You want to talk about overpaying a running back? That's why you don't sign him those huge.
Every running back is overpaid, in my opinion.
I was about to say, once they hit past that rookie contract,
yeah, I feel like he does about the Islanders.
The 49ers can run the ball. Can run the ball.
Yep,
that's clock. I mean, if Garoppolo does not throw an interception, I think they're 7-0. It all comes down to him and how he plays.
There's going to be an upset somewhere.
I think the Rams. I think they could beat. I think San Francisco could beat Dallas. I think Arizona can beat
the Los Angeles Rams.
And then the AFC, the Patriots are not beating Buffalo. Watch out for Buffalo. No. Watch out for Buffalo. Watch out for Buffalo. I don't see any way Pittsburgh beats Kansas City, I just don't think
the other two losers
to beat Cincinnati. I think that one's chalk in the first round, honestly. But I can see upsets in the NFC. All those teams within one game of one another. People keep on forgetting.
Second round. Second round will have some juicy upsets
Yeah.
because it's just so hard to know.
And Tampa Bay is tough at home. That's the whole thing. If they got to go play on the road, they were not a great road team. They come a bunch of guys coming off the injured list.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't been able to stop the run. They're getting Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and JPP back this week, which will help the running game, which in essence helps them in the pass defense also. And you still got 12. You got 12.
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
I'll say this about Buffalo. You mentioned in the off, or I think maybe you and I talked about in the offseason. Josh Allen had a fantastic, unbelievable season. Of course, it was a year when there was no fans in the stands. This year, he's tried to play too much of hero ball, trying to extend plays too much. They get away from not establishing the run game, which hurts their team a lot. I'll be interested to see what defensive. I don't think Mac Jones is a fantastic quarterback just quite yet. He'll be an okay quarterback. I'm not. He's above a game manager. He's like a Kirk Cousins-esque type of player. I think he'll never be a guy who you can rely on to say, "Hey, I need you to, throw the ball 45 times and put up 450 yards with 4 touchdowns." That's just not the type of quarterback he is. But I'll be interested to see what type of mindset they come at if they need to establish the run game in Buffalo if they want any chance, in my opinion.
At the end of the year, they incorporated Devin Singletary, the running ball, a lot more. They weren't earlier in the year, but here's the thing. The problem with Buffalo is, and here's the thing, New England has played them tough. They play each other every single year, twice a year. Those are always tough matchups. He's 85% of their offense. He's involved with 85% of the offense. And if he's not going well, they could struggle and lose. And he didn't play well down the stretch, but I just think they're too much for New England. And then I think they can beat Kansas City. I don't think Kansas City's all that great this year. I don't. Mahomes is on his new contract extension, so there's less depth. And you're seeing it this season. They haven't been dominant this year. They've been on the downhill slide since last year, honestly. Watch out for Tennessee if Derrick Henry comes back. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, because people always forget you win one game against Cincinnati, then you're hosting the AFC Championship. That's how the Falcons got there. Everyone's like, "Come on, the Falcons." They won I think they beat God, I can't remember who was in the opening round. And they ended up having a great game, their best game against Green Bay, and that's it. Everyone took Rodgers in that game, and that's it. They're in the Super Bowl, only to blow it like the assholes they are. But it was that same thing where no one's, come on, Atlanta, we've seen this before. You never know. It's
How
2
long
wins
before,
and you're there.
How long before we're 18 games in the season and 8 playoff teams? It's not too far off.
No.
Next negotiations for certain.
Wait, aren't we at 18?
Or 18 weeks, but 17
games. 17 games. It'll be 18 games, and there'll be 8 teams in the playoff.
All about the money, man. You know that.
Yeah. Well, during this miserable cold time of the year, I don't care if they make it 24 weeks, anything to give me something to look forward to.
And now, but what do they do, right? Now it's super, right? Just not wild card week anymore. Super wild card. Why? Because we had a Monday night game for more money. Just because it's always about the money.
It's actually, but I will say this, Grumpy. That 2 seed getting a bye, that was always a scam. You don't deserve it. Like one team, best in the conference, you get off. The rest of you, no. The 2 seed coming in with their 12-4, tied with 2 other teams, but they get some tiebreaker, so now they're just off for the week. No, you're playing.
That's what happened in the NFC this year. Tampa Bay and Green Bay had the same record.
No. Green Bay sat on the last week against Detroit. They would have won that game.
What was the record?
Yeah, okay, Grumpy, though. Come on.
I'm just saying they had the same record.
If it had any implications where they could not have won, they would have played. They would have played a more competitive game. Right? You hate Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, you're right. I do hate Dan Campbell.
I know a few boys on the team, so I pull for him a bit. But hey, I love talking, and I love talking Islanders, and I love talking NFL.
My voice is even done.
Oh, was
I'm
that
done? I'm about to say even my voice is done. Even this is enough for me.
And FYI, just to let you know, Kansas City and Tennessee also had the same record this year.
I didn't remember. That's right. I was about to say it's tough to remember every single record out there, but we've got a lot of string of honored games coming up, so we'll have plenty of hockey to watch. That could be good or bad for us guys. Hopefully we come out of this stretch, we're able to come with 16 points out of a possible 22 in the next 11 games, 10 of those at home, very winnable games, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to thank Andy Francess here for being on the show today, as always, and I want to thank you, Grumpy Old Man, for being a part of the show, as always, today. We had a great conversation about Islanders, kind of recapping what we had spoke about in the preseason, as well as kind of talking about going forward, what we need to expect and what we're looking for this season and in the future. I want to thank both of you guys, though, for being on today.
You did a great job hosting today, TJ.
Oh, don't flatter me, Grump.
That's great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Maybe I'll come on in 2 years when your audience can delete this from their mind.
No, you'll be on at the end of the season when Boston makes the playoffs and we don't.
We'll see. And by the next time I'm on here, if it's in maybe like 2 years, you'll already have scrapped the team 9 times by then. And there's been like 8, full scale sell-offs. And
we probably would have re-signed Josh Bailey to a 5-year extension at that point. A loyal soldier.
Oh, man. Well, thank you guys so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuned in and listened. We got some Islanders action coming up. Hopefully, we got you through a little bit of the lull of a 12-game break. But thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And thank you again, Andy. And thank you, Grumpy Old Man.
My pleasure.